It's one of a backup plan.
Unimportant. It's just, that's okay. It's just I'm the one that has to read it out.
Oh.
Welcome aboard, Deputy Mayor on Zoom. Thank you for letting us know you're there. I'd like to open the meeting for October for the City of Prospect, and in doing so, we acknowledge that we're on the traditional country of the Kaurna people, the Adelaide Plains region, and we pay our respects to the elders past, present and emerging. We recognise and respect their cultural heritage, beliefs and relationships. So now we're going to repeat. That's great. Could you put yourself on mute, Matt? If that's okay?
Yeah, that'd
be good. We recognise and respect their cultural heritage, beliefs and relationships with the land, and we acknowledge that they are of continuing importance to the Kaurna people living today. Also read you the Council Pledge. We seek wisdom and understanding as we face the duties of our united task, praying for the peace and prosperity of our city. Thank you. You can be seated. I believe we have nil. Apologies we have from Councillor Harris. We have received that thank you minute, Secretary. And as you've heard and now can see, Deputy Mayor is on Zoom. Declaration by members of a conflict of interest. Are there any? No?
Sorry, just if you can hold on for a minute. Item 10.6, which is a community grants program. I'm a member of a number of organisations who are potential grant recipients.
really just perceived, isn't it, if you're just a member?
Yes, just for noting as a perceived.
Only if you're an office bearer that you need to declare.
Yes, as an actual, yeah. Yep. Okay. Any others? If not, move on. Confirmation of minutes from the ordinary meeting of Council held on the 22nd of September 2020 to be taken as read and confirmed as a true record. So I'm happy to move that way.
Yes.
Thank you, Councillor Barnett. Do you wish to speak to it? Do I have a seconder? Councillor Wynne, do you wish to speak to it? Excellent. I just say that nothing held on the 22nd of September could be considered an ordinary outcome at all. Because it was my birthday, remember? No, you didn't have to remember. Sorry.
We didn't.
Happy 40th.
Long gone.
Yeah, about a month. Yeah.
It was the 60th, wasn't it?
If there's no further debate, Councillor.
We should have remembered.
That closes debate. All those in favour? Against? It's carried. Like it. Wait. Me and my big mouth. Huh? Walk into that. Item 6 is public question time. Do we have any members of the public who wish to ask some questions? Yes, we come forward from the back first and then on our left. And if you could just grab, use the seat here if you wish to sit, or you can stand.
Pass a copy to your administration, please.
Right. And just to describe the process for those who are new, we have 15 minutes allocated in total to question and answer time, and individual people can take up to 3 minutes to ask a question, but if it's asked much quicker than that, it allows more time for answers. So name and
address as well.
Name and address, if you could. Thank you, Councillor.
Yeah, Mark Standen, 7 Wilson Street, Nailsworth.
Far away.
My question is pertaining to one of the items later in the evening, which is the recommendations on Nganawira. And I have a question. During my time when I was a councillor, I can't remember any time when there was problems with dogs at the park. I can't remember us being informed about any attacks or any nuisance of dogs. And so aside from the anecdotal feedback during the consultation process, that we've had. Is there any other formal data that council has suggesting that there is an ongoing issue with dogs at Nganuwira? That's the first part of my question. And given it's possible that access for dogs at Nganuwira may be reviewed in the future as part of this process, will council be consulting with dog owners who currently access the park?
Okay, thank you. I'll take the question. CEO.
Through your chair to the director.
Director.
Through the chair, response to question 1. I'm not aware of any data regarding to dog complaints. I'm happy to provide that as part of the follow-up report as part of this issue. Item 2 was, sorry.
Will you be consulting with dog owners seeing as there's going to be a review as to access? Will you be including dog owners as part of the ongoing consultation process?
Through the chair, our recommendation is to go to further consultation. That consultation will be open to the entire community. There'll be signs put up in the corporate signs put up in the reserve, and that'll allow anyone to respond to the consultation process. So yes, they will be included.
Thank you, Director. Anything further, Mr. Standard?
Yeah, will they be targeted? I know that you'll probably go back to Nailsworth Primary. You'll probably go back to the people who responded. Will dog owners be targeted specifically, or would just be part of the open consultation process?
Through the chair, as part of the open consultation process, we believe that people who will be visiting the reserve with their dog will see the signs. Consultation is available after consultation.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Standard.
Thank you.
Mr. Hodby, if you come forward, and if you wish to sit, there's the seat. Otherwise, you can stand. Up to you. And you have up to 3 minutes to ask your question. But first of all, your name and address for the records.
Shane Hodby, 8 2nd Avenue, Sefton Park. The question I'd like to ask is in relation to one of the agenda items with the Broadview Football Club. Obviously, there's been 3 proposed sites for the new development there. The question I'd like to ask is that has there been enough time to actually target the people that are involved, and one of them being the Broadview Football Club, which is probably the major tenant. My understanding is Collective put it together and it came out on Friday, as my understanding, which gives myself being the president very little time to discuss that with the board. So I'm not quite sure council sees that as a fair enough time to actually make a recommendation on which site they think is fit for the new building.
So your specific question in all of that?
Is the time process. I would like it to be adjourned, purely being that we haven't had enough discussion around the proposed sites.
It's more of a statement, but your question is, do we think we've had enough time to consult?
Yeah, yes.
Sorry to take liberties with that. Yep. It is a question time thing, so we've got to be careful. CEO?
So, Director, do you want to make a comment first? That's right. Through your chair.
As identified in the report, we undertook initially some key consultation with key stakeholders. We prepared a draft that went to overall consultation. As a result of that consultation, we put a report back identifying that our preferred location for a community hub. As a result of the feedback we received, an alternative site was identified. We acknowledged that we only informed the club on Friday of our preferred hybrid site. The reason for the timelines associated with this is we're aware that a grant of funding opportunity comes up in October. It hasn't come out yet, so I suspect it will come out this week. And to support that application, it's preferred that council has a preferred location for that community hub. So therefore, that's the timelines we're associated with. We were looking to bring a report back in November to council to identify that we intend to put a grant application in for a community hub. It is ideal that we have a site nominated, but it's not. I don't think it's necessarily a position that would prevent the grant application being successful. So if council did want to undertake further consultation with some key stakeholders, I think that'd be okay. Because we're bringing a follow-up report back in November.
Sorry, Director, if I read into that, you're saying that the location is desired in order to put the grant application in, but if it moved 50 metres this way or that way to the state government, that wouldn't be of consequence to them.
True, I believe that's the correct place.
Thank you. Did you have a follow-up question?
No, that's pretty much Simon's. So as long as it's we can have target consultation with key stakeholders, that would be a good preferred way for
Yeah, that's an opinion, but well, thank you. I'll let you give it. Thank you very much. Yeah. Any further questions from the gallery? No? Great. We'll conclude public question time. We'll move to petitions. There are nil. Deputations, we have one from Marilyn Kingston regarding the Vine Street Plaza redevelopment. If you could come forward, Ms. Kingston. I believe you have a slideshow, and our Minute Secretary will help you get that set up. Just wait till that's ready to go, and your 5 minutes will start from the time it's ready, and we've got your name and address details recorded.
Do I get a little bell to give me?
I'll give you a 1 minute warning. I'll do my best.
Okay, I'll do my best too.
Okay. And we have a hard copy, elected members, and we're happy to distribute that if you want. We'll give you a hard copy or send you an electronic version. So just for the sake of the records, Ms. Kingston, if you could provide your name and address.
Marilyn Kingston, 55 Boyle Street, Prospect, 5082.
Thank you, and your 5 minutes starts now.
Okay, so I'll skip the heading. Now, evidence of the need of my proposal, increased densification of the inner suburbs with no outside recreation areas incorporated into the new developments, especially in the corridors. COVID has changed how we live and our need for high density urban infill. We're recognising more and more that city workplaces are not as relevant, and there's increased rates of tenancy available. Importance of increasing green space within the changing landscape of Prospect. The character of Prospect is rapidly changing. Quality of builds and their environmental impact is not always reflecting the needs or desires of many Prospect residents. Prospect needs to be maintained as a family-friendly, desirable location with consideration of current and future needs of increasing numbers of people and their families. The City of Prospect, as you'll be familiar with, this open space strategy has 23.34 hectares of open space, which represents 1.2 hectares per 1,000 people, which is one of the lowest in a metropolitan open space offerings compared to the average provision of 8 hectares per 1,000 people for inner metropolitan councils. Just breathe.
Yes, relax.
It's not moving on.
Go the arrow.
Yeah, I think the arrow might be better with this. Okay, I'll let you read this, but it's really taken from the World Health Organization, and I'm quite happy to forward a copy of that to anyone who would like. But clearly, psychological and physical benefits of having urban green spaces. There are enormous health benefits, even pregnancy outcomes. Mechanisms include relaxation, stress alleviation, increased physical activity, reduced exposure to air pollutants, noise, and excessive heat. And there are other measures that you can read about at your own leisure. The West Ward in particular lacks suitable play areas for children. The relocation of the library from Nailsworth is convenient, but is not provided adequately for young families. The proposed space will help to compensate for the lack of opportunity for a physical outlet for young children. Many children of this age are unable to sustain more than short periods of sitting and concentration. Other councils have recognised the need for green space in close proximity to their libraries, for example, Mitcham, Goodwood, Stirling, to name a few. This is from the United Nations Conventions on the Rights of the Child, which you can read yourselves, but I'm sure we're all familiar with the rights of children. Prospect Primary School has extensive play areas, which prior to 2016 were well utilised by children and families school hours during weekends and school holidays. However, despite being a public school and the Education Department's policy supporting public access to school play areas, this is no longer the case. And I know Council is following and I wish you good luck with that too, because particularly for children who are a little bit older, not preschoolers, this would be a wonderful addition. A petition recently submitted to council was developed as a means of community consultation. It was left on a bench at Chibo's for people who already use the plaza to read and decide whether or not to support the proposition. There was no prompting from others, and in a short time, more than 550 signatures. I've removed the petition, and currently it's 590 signatures have been collected from people who use the hub and support incorporating a play area for young children. Nature-based play spaces. Okay, I'll let you read that, but it's very important, as agreed by paediatricians, for overall development. Natural elements such as trees, shrubs, waters, boulders and sand are ideal, especially when located in easily accessed central locations used by families. I've taken a photo of an area under the plane trees, which I think would be a great place for the kind of play areas I'm talking about. Would be inexpensive and utilised through the day. It would not limit flexibility of the space. If grass can't be grown, bark chips are a great alternative, and inclusion of a boundary fence between the western area and car park would be an important safety feature. This is just an example from around Adelaide. You might want something a little bit less rustic, but and these are just play areas. This one's at Hackney, the kind of rustic type play setting, boulders with a water feature. They're good for kids to clamber over, jump off, and for tired parents to sit on. This is another water feature with a trough, and that would usefully add irrigation to the plane trees as well. Stumps at different levels for climbing, jumping, balance, or just sitting. And this is an example of a cubby that would fit quite nicely and be pertinent to the environment. So all natural wood, and this could facilitate imaginary play as well as activity.
Just sort of that.
I think you're pretty close to the end.
I am going as fast as I could.
Do you want an extension? Can we
I
move?
think you're pretty close to the end, though, aren't you, Ms. Kingston?
Okay, yeah. Anyway, I appreciate the opportunity just to illustrate the two previous questions that I've asked at council, which I just and just to have some feedback from the community, and just to for everyone to sort of recognise how important this is.
Thank you. Sorry, Councillor, I
Move for an
seen
extension.
the slideshow and I knew that was the last slide, so we're going to keep rolling. Questions from members? Are there any? Perhaps I could ask one. Have staff advised you of what has been considered? Because I don't think they're terribly far apart. Have they had any conversations with you at all?
No, and you were going to meet with me, but I hadn't heard anything after our last question. So, but that didn't happen. So I thought I'll go ahead and do this.
Very happy to meet with you and bring up to date with what's in the designs.
Yeah.
I think we're a long way towards alleviating your fears, pretty much as we've discussed before. So, yeah, certainly not falling on deaf ears, but the communication might be the gap. Any further questions? Councillor Grigg.
Just one question. If there were options around Prospect Primary School being more accessible after hours, would that replace the need to change the design of Vine Street Plaza?
I think we could do with both. I really think that part of the thing is, with the library and the way, there's a small space for young children, but they really, and the convenience, it's right in the hub. And I'm talking about preschool children, whereas Prospect Primary caters more for school age, although, you could play with younger children as well. But also it's, during school hours, you can't use that area. So this would be an area that would be utilised throughout the day, every day of the week. So I think it would be an as well rather than an alternative.
So I thought your argument was more about because we don't have the school, we need this, but that's not the case.
It's because we lack enough areas really for children, and particularly with the kind of apartment dwellings that are being built. Like, I don't know how many of you got children or grandchildren, but imagine living in that box through COVID or at any time really. And children really do need that, and so do their parents need the opportunity to find these places. And it's, having this central location is really quite important too.
Thank you.
Councillor De Backer.
Just a brief question. Have you also looked at locations like Barker Gardens, which has a grassed area, currently doesn't have any play equipment?
Yeah, well, it's got grass area and it's got some lovely rose bushes. It's got no fencing. It's got really very little for young children to play in. It's quite good for weddings, and sometimes they have dog groups meet there. But I haven't seen any play with infants, so I don't think it's appropriate as it is.
Can I just follow that by asking why you don't think it's appropriate, given it's very close, it's better than what we could ever do here? Trees, shade, grass. What would make it more appropriate?
Oh well, it would. I think that could be another addition. Certainly, I think it would need to be fenced. Children are very good at darting off, and not everybody is young, fit and able looking after children these days. A lot of grandparents looking after young children, and they just don't have the speed or the ability to keep children safe in those open plan environments. You know, if you took a young child through, you know, you could see the limitations of it in terms of what is required. And if you read the recommendations by World Health, it certainly wouldn't fit for those requirements. So, yeah.
Well, I certainly don't want to sell it. I want to keep it. Are you suggesting, therefore, that this whole plaza should be fenced? Is that your aspiration?
No, I'm just thinking under the plane trees, it's already dirt, and that could easily be bark chipped under there. It's shaded, and I think if you had a boundary fence where the car park meets it, you know, it's a different level.
Yes.
So it's not somewhere that, you know, at night time it could be quite dangerous, people stepping off the edge anyway, if they were moving to the car park. So I think to have fencing along there, something, you know, I mean, that was just an example, but you could have something less obtrusive and that would meet the safety needs, but not the whole plaza, no, just the car park area, because I think parents with children that age would be there present, watching over the children. They'd grab their baby chino and their cappuccino and they'd be sitting out there and talking with each other, and the children would be playing with each other. So it's not only physical, but, you know, social skill development that would be met, and also for young mothers who are quite isolated, it's an opportunity for them to meet and support each other.
Okay, thank you.
And fathers.
I guess I'm not quite sure how to phrase the question. I'm picking up from Councillor De Backer's question about Barker Gardens, which is beautiful and maintained and has lots of things in it. What is the difference that you can get a coffee next to this space? Because that is already there and beautiful. What is it that's special about it?
I mean, you can get a coffee over there now because there's going to be a place at the bottom of the apartment. So It's not about coffee, but it's about close to the library, convenience, and also it's in the western side. You're not having to cross over a busy road, you're not having to cross over Churchill Road, and the western area is quite a populated area, and there's very little for young children.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Any further questions? No, thank you very much for your presentation and going to all the trouble to put a slideshow together for us. Thank you. And as I say, if members want a copy, please contact Minute Secretary and we'll get one too. Okay, or an electronic one. Okay, thank you very much. You're welcome to resume your seat in the gallery. I don't think that item's up for discussion tonight, so if you want to stay for the rest of the meeting, you can. But understandably, if you want to go, that'd be okay.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
That's interesting.
All right, members, we're now on to section 9, deputations. Sorry, not deputations are done. Questions without notice. Are there any questions without notice? Councillor De Backer.
I've got two brief ones. One of the decisions made during COVID, still during COVID, that Payenthe was going to offer zero cost until December for some of our spaces. I'm just wondering how many external non-council users have been booked, and as a percentage of those that have been booked, and also how are we promoting the zero cost to our community?
So yeah, Councillor, I think we might have to take that on notice and come back to you.
Sort of like memo or something to us all. Yeah.
If that's acceptable, Chair, we'll do that.
Okay. Councillor, any further questions? Any further questions without notice? Councillor Pearce.
Quick question. I was trying to look back on to get some information from our workshop sessions on our website, and the informational workshop sessions have agenda and minutes. But when I went to the site the agendas are there, but the minutes aren't there for workshop sessions. So I wasn't able to get the information I required. So I'm just wondering why we've got agenda and minutes there when the minutes aren't there.
See ya. Excellent question. Councillor, have we got any idea on that?
Part of the answer might be a slightly technical thing in local government language. They're not minutes, they're notes. And there's a reason why, and I can't remember off the top of my head, but it's not a formal meeting of council, so there aren't minutes taken. But I'm just wondering if you just brought the question, is there some reason why the notes couldn't go up?
Not that I'm aware of, but if you don't mind, I'll come back to you.
But even if it's not going to be there, could you just delete that in the minutes?
Excuse me, just a point of order with Deputy Mayor Larwood leaving the room. Is that counted as an absenteeism?
Well,
I'm just making note of it early on in the meeting.
thank you, Councillor.
Calm down. I'm still here.
I'll rule that Zoomland makes that question very difficult to answer. I'll deem that if the elected member is present in the viewfinder, I'll deem them to be present at the meeting. If they're out of shot, not present, but they may still be in the room. So, there he is, still there.
The notes would be handy for the information I wanted for one of the items on the agenda. That's all.
Yes.
Okay, no, that's a good question. Do we have any further questions without notice? Councillor Barney.
Yes, just apropos of the last question, is there any reason why instead of using council agendas and reports for council meetings, it could be records, agenda?
See, I don't know the technical answer to that question. So it's a simple enough question, but there's some reason we call them notes. I don't know.
Frankly, Councillor, I'm not sure, but I'll come back.
I'm just saying in the way that we refer to them, so that we could technically, if they're still notes, they can still be included because they're not minutes of meetings. So it's just a rephrasing.
So what's clear is those are informal meetings that can't make decisions. Certainly happy to share the notes, and we'll find out why we're not doing it.
So, sorry, elected members, they're very sensible questions, but there is a part of the Act allows informal gatherings. So just let the CEO go back and check what do you call the records of those? Should there be records? Can you publish them? They're all good questions. Let's just get it.
Used to.
Yes. Okay. Any further questions about notes? If not, we'll move on to reports for decision. Item 10.1, 2019-2020 Audit Committee Annual Report and Self-Assessment. And as we do this once a year, we ask the chair of our Audit Committee to come forward and address the meeting. So welcome to Ms. Corinne Garrett. And can I ask to suspend meeting procedures to allow her to speak until 7:45? Should we need it? Just quick show of hands. All those in favour? Against? That is carried. Thank you. Welcome aboard, Ms. Garrett. Great to have you here. Thanks.
So, good evening, everyone. So, as you are aware, and we are very aware as your Audit Committee, it's been a very challenging 12 months. Up to the end of June, you had a new building, or everything that went with that, and then we got COVID. So, I think overall, Council has coped with the risks and changes of that quite well. There's a couple of points that I just want to draw your attention to in the agenda, which is the outcome of the evaluation of the Audit Committee. So that's where we've all responded anonymously into a feedback sheet, and then that's been incorporated into a report to you. So there's just a few points here I'd like to touch on, and that's we are a committee of council. We're there to assist you. So we would like to have a bit of involvement in strategic areas where we might be able to just give another point of view, or maybe to assist you as you're moving forward developing these things. So particularly with the strategic management plan, we see the asset management plans, of course, but your strategic management plan, we've asked this time for us to see it during the consultation period, so that we can make comment not on what you want to do, that's entirely up to you and your community, but more from the perspective is if there is a risk that we want you to think about, or some kind of impact on your financial sustainability. So that's all our gambit is to speak about. The other item is the internal audit plan. We have an internal audit plan, and it has number of areas where we look at the internal audit process. One area that has been neglected by the majority of local government for years is the IT area. Now, I know you've got a confidential report later about some information and about a government assessment, and I suppose that's just brought out the difficulties, the complications in understanding IT risk. So we would just like to be on the page of the holistic level of your IT questions, answers, decisions, thinking about, and incorporate that into the internal audit plan, just so it's another risk area that we can oversee. The other item is about external audit. Local government audit committees are quite different to audit committees in the public sector, out in the private sector. In those sectors, the audit committee manages the whole engagement with the external auditor. And we're not necessarily saying that that is the way to go, but we are saying that we need to probably seek some clarity and some understanding of where we should be dealing in that space. Not saying the staff aren't doing a great job, but do we see our role being more involved? I notice that the Reform Bill addresses that to some extent as well. So it's just something to think about. The next item was overseeing governance of the committee and council. That's more to be involved with you guys when we come to workshops that you might be doing about situations that are making a big impact. So obviously the PID Act, things like that, where you feel that our involvement might assist you in understanding something or assist you in understanding the risk. It also helps us if we know what you're being confronted with, because we need to understand the risk framework that you're working with and the risk issues and challenges that are coming towards you. And the reporting responsibilities to council is the last item, and that's where we meet diligently, but we're a little bit in the dark. We don't know. We know our items go up to your council meetings, but we don't really know feedback from that of how you see those, whether you see our recommendations as useful, or what kind of situation you're finding that you're working with us in. So we're just seeking that we get a little bit more feedback, whether it's through the CEO, the mayor, the elected members that are on the audit committee, but just a bit of feedback of where you're finding our input useful and where you think we could do more. So that's in summary what came out of our annual report, which is in there anyway. So does anyone have any questions?
Are there any questions? Councillor De Backer then.
Yeah, so thank you for this. I always enjoy having you. I guess in practicality, how it would work. So one of the things I guess we always look to, sometimes when we do have an elected member that's actually on the panel, they can inform or elaborate a little bit more than the report does. And sometimes you don't see the hierarchy sometimes, things that are really important. But how would we as a council actually affect that to get you perhaps more involved in more things? Would that be a motion to council that we'd have to do to get you involved at some of those points?
Well, I think it's probably at this point something just to keep in mind and think about. I don't think there's a one size fits all in this, and I think it depends on the situation. But I suppose we've got representation back to our audit committee directly from council. And I guess it's incorporating that, but I think where it comes to workshops and information sessions, really if you think that we could have some input or you think that they'd be useful for us to know, to definitely consider that. So audit committee kind of thinking earlier rather than at the end when, oh, we've got to tell the audit committee about this.
Thank you. Christine.
Yes, thank you, Corinne. I think it's a very useful idea to involving people on the audit committee. It may not be the whole audit committee, or maybe a strategic plan. That out amongst yourselves. I mean, we do have you there as people with expertise. So we should perhaps, in my view, be making the most of it. Some councils have it that if you have an elected member represented on committees, then they can be provided an opportunity, if they wish, to report back. And it may be in consultation with the chairperson that the elected member, can just have a little, sorry, just losing my pages here. Mechanism might be something useful. And it may be that there's a short survey at some stage that elected members can just provide some feedback to you. So just some of my thoughts off the top of my head, having been on the committee and realising that sometimes it does feel like a strange creature outside.
The audit committee, strange creature, yeah, okay.
Very kindly.
Strange creatures.
Oh, okay.
Madam Chair. Thank you. Any further questions? Yes.
Because we're in informal discussions. I mean, one thing that was discussed quite a bit at our meeting the other night was having the audit committee really review our strategic plan and give that advice, because I'm disappointed they're not. And I know through the open consultation you will be, but I would hope going forward that, particularly with this one and future strategic plan reviews, that the audit committee are brought in before it goes out to community consultation, because they could provide valuable input to make us aware before we even put the document out. So I don't know if the administration want to comment on that at all, what the plan is for audit committee's involvement with the strategic plan. I think it just when it goes out as part of the regular consultation.
Through you, Chair, we'll be directed by council.
So, but anyone can be engaged in the consultation process that you're recommending tonight.
Yes.
But your question is, could there be a specific targeted? Please tell us what you
before
think.
it goes out.
Before it goes out, I think that would make good sense that the audit committee actually do have a look at it before it goes out to say, are you aware of X, Y, Z before it goes out? Potentially, if it can't be done for this one, I'd like it done for future ones, because they're a committee of professionals in terms of the independent people and the professional backgrounds. It wouldn't be it would be a good idea for them to have a look at it, I think.
It's a question for the elected members to dwell on, is whether it's before or as part of the consultation process that's proposed. Okay. Any further questions? Corinne, any further to add?
No, I think, look, I've always been very happy about what this council does. For a small council, you definitely hit above your weight there. So it's you do perform very, very well. And I think I'd have to say that we've been very impressed with how you manage this building. So last time I came here, we hadn't moved in yet. So the risk management and project management involved in this building, we thought was really top notch, and you covered all the bases, and hopefully you're living in it quite comfortably now. So, and I really like the amount of resources and effort you put into risk management. I think you're very responsible in that way. So, no, we're quite happy with the way things are going. So, yeah.
Thank you very much. Please join me in thanking our chair of our audit committee. Now, I'll pull us back into formal session. Item 10.1, the Audit Committee Annual Report and Self-Assessment for the 2019-20 year. Recommendations on page 1. Is somebody happy to move it in its current form? Councillor Ripp, do you wish to speak to it?
Just briefly. Look, really, I won't take up too much time other than to say I've really enjoyed being the council rep on Audit Committee. If you do, moving forward, have questions or you want to give feedback, use me. That's what I'm here for. But yeah, just to reiterate, I would like us to have a look at particularly how we use the audit committee for things like strategic plans moving forward and before consultation. I think they'd be a useful asset if we do use them, to have a look at those type of big documentation before we actually send it out. But I'll leave it there because a lot's been already said tonight.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Barnett, wish to speak to it?
No, having read the whole report.
Very good. Any further debate? Councillor Ripp, any need to sum up? That concludes debate. All those in favour? Against? It's carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 10.2, internal review of decisions. Section 270, review of the Cassie Street traffic and parking issues petition. Recommendations on page 20 to 21. And I note the new part 2 on the screen, which has been detected and corrected by the consultant lawyer, but of course we didn't get a new report because that was already out there. Just checking, Deputy Mayor, can you see that on your shared screen? And nod would be good. Only so.
Yeah,
Hard
it's pretty small. Like it's a little bit difficult to, realistically read it.
Okay. Are we able to fix that somehow, Minute Secretary? Is that,
That's there.
if we share the screen, you'll be able to see it. I think that's the trick. But that's. Is that better? Oh, it's something.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, perfect.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm not sure if you picked up, members. 838 had a funny expression about having an opinion or not having an opinion. So the CEO went back and checked, and there was an omission. Regrettable. I would have thought the word "not" is something that a lawyer might check whether it's in or not. So I'm sorry about that. But we're asking someone to move what's on the screen, which includes that extra part 2, as opposed to what's in the papers, which doesn't have that correction. Somebody
It's really just affirming the decision. I'm happy to move that.
happy to move that way. Councillor Ripp, wish to speak to it.
No. No.
You have a seconder. Councillor Pearce, wish to speak to it.
Thanks.
Further debate? There being none, I'll put that straight away. All those in favour? Against? It is carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 10.3, Broadview Oval, Yata Tutu Yata Draft Master Plan recommendations on page 70. Somebody happy to move it in its current form? Councillor Ripp?
Yeah, I'll move to just to get it on the floor. Look, obviously, happy that we're at this stage where I do believe we can endorse the master plan. Obviously, there will be some further discussion that needs to happen around the location of the building. So I know that I'll move it to get it on the floor. I do believe that we need to meet grant guidelines. We do need to get this master plan endorsed, and then we can look at, do we need extra that I guess to finalise that extra bit of discussion around the location of the football club rooms. But to meet grant guidelines, we do need to get this process moving. It's been a long time coming to get an endorsed master plan at Broadview Oval, and if we do want to meet grant guidelines, we do need to get the ball rolling with this. So I'll just leave it there and open it and sum up if I need to.
Okay, thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Pearce, do you wish to speak to it?
Yes, thanks. Yeah, I'm happy to second it. With the explanation by the director earlier, that the reason we're doing this so quickly is to make sure we're ready to apply for the grant. I don't like really the words "they're closing the loop," so I do hope that this endorsement that we can go back to the stakeholders and also consultation perhaps to the residents that were addressed it previously. So what I'm trying to say, I guess, is I hope this endorsement doesn't set it in stone. That's what I'm saying.
Yes, I understand. Yes. Further speakers, Councillor Groot and then Councillor Barnett.
Thank you, Mayor. I just had a couple of questions.
Sorry, and Deputy Mayor. Thank you.
Gone but not forgotten. I just had a couple of questions, some of which was raised before by the director. So the first one, and some went off. The first one, in this paper to us tonight, it talks about a community health and fitness hub. And that's language I've not come across yet with this. So can I just ask whether that's a slight, subtle change in language in terms of what we've been calling it? I must admit I wasn't at the Broadview consultation. I think I was somewhere else. So I'm just not familiar with those words. So can I just check that?
So yeah, thank you, Councillor. My understanding is that indeed that's what it's been characterised as.
Okay, right. So that's not new language.
No.
Okay, good.
And that's in full consultation. In fact, offered by the football club, is my understanding. They want to have a broader program of events there, not just be dominated by football.
Yeah.
And so do we. So that was quite a nice union, and the language was changed to reflect that.
Right. Okay. Good. No, that's good. Thank you. I just playing a bit of catch up with that because I wasn't at the on-site workshop. So the second question I've got relates to what our commitments have been previously. So I know when we had our workshop most recently, we had talked about how we can get this out to the public and make sure that there's some exposure to that. Can I just ask whether we had made any commitments to going out for a further round of consultation prior to closing the loop or approving the master plan at our last workshop.
CEO, through you to the director.
For the chair, no, we've made no commitments to anybody or community groups or community about the endorsement of this plan.
Okay. And the last question I have relates to the grant application, which is a great opportunity and one that we should absolutely be pursuing. But I just want to clarify something the director said before. I thought I heard him say the location of the hub is not material to the success or otherwise at this point of the grant application. So, and the grant application won't go in until we've considered the grant application, which is coming back to us in November. So would that not give us an opportunity to go back for a further conversation with those people who are most affected by this? I'm not suggesting a community consultation. I'm suggesting a consultation with those who've expressed interest in this in the past as part of that grant application process, and then approve both the location of the centre as well as the grant application in our November meeting. Does that logic ring true? I guess.
So I don't think the director will disagree. Yes, there is an opportunity to do targeted consultation. We're aware of the grant timeline. We don't believe the actual final position of the hub will be material as long as we know it's going to be there. So there is some opportunities. Sorry, through you, Chair.
Chair, I'll just add that we generally don't have a month before the next meeting. We only have about 2.5 weeks before the next agenda is, starting to get in some form of finalisation. So it's not like we have a full month. If we were to do some further consultation, which is possible, it would be against our principles of our community engagement and consultation policy. I'm not saying that doesn't mean it can't happen.
Just the time frame.
Exactly. Yeah.
So contrary to rather than against, you mean? We normally say 3 weeks minimum. Is that correct? Sorry, okay. Thank you. Sorry, Councillor.
Yeah, and look, I take your point through the chair around it's not a full 4 weeks. It's 4 weeks till we meet, of course, but not necessarily for the amount of time to do consultation or papers. I'm probably less concerned about the contrary nature of community consultation. We're not going out to community. I wouldn't endorse that at this point, but I would go out to those people who are most affected. We've had a deputation tonight that represents one part of that conversation. There are residents who probably represent the other part of that. I'm going to have a go at an amendment if I can.
You have about a minute left.
I'll speak quick. Point 3, well, actually probably in this will be replacing point 2. And sorry, I'm thinking out loud here more than anything else. That council consult with key stakeholders on the proposed master plan prior to the matter being considered by council at its November 2020 meeting. I'm happy to have those words massaged a little bit, but the intent is that we go out in a very short period of time to speak to those people most affected, and then we use the November meeting as an opportunity to both approve the master plan as well as any grant application.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, and you can in a second. Sorry, CEO, I'm just cognizant of the words key stakeholders. I think we've defined them in a process, haven't we, Director? Is that correct? We set up a consultation for this where we actually say who we think key stakeholders are. I'm just trying to remember.
The initial consultation we did earlier this year, we went to key stakeholders and we went to all the sporting group tenants on the site. And that's what we identified as key stakeholders.
Yes. So unusually, because we've defined them, I think targeted consultation might be a better way to.
I'm happy with those.
That would include the residents you spoke.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep. It's your amendment.
And I'm happy with that. So we've targeted.
Council undertake targeted consultation. Is it on the whole master plan you're interested in, or?
Well, I think the issue is more around location of the centre, but I would leave that broad enough that council staff can determine where the pressure points are for that.
Take out the words key stakeholders, yes. And consider by council at its November meeting.
That's November.
Your amendment? Yeah.
Sorry, Jess.
Okay, thank you. It's
Sorry, just for completeness, November 2020 meeting, just in case.
oh well.
This has been going for about 5 years, so I just.
Whatever happened to trust? Don't answer that. Thank you. Are you okay if that's you moving that amendment?
Yes, I'll move that amendment. Yes, no.
I'll take a question from Councillor De Backer.
That was the question.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. There's an amendment put. It's customary for me to ask the mover and seconder whether they wish to incorporate before I actually ask for a seconder to the amendment. Councillor Ripp, you happy to incorporate that? That's a yes. Yep. Councillor Pearce, you happy to incorporate that?
Absolutely.
Leave of the meeting to incorporate that change. All those in favour?
A question.
Sorry.
So is that not that's not replacing part 2? It's part 3. It's part 3.
That's a different part 2. I heard.
It's a different part 2, correct?
Well,
So
I wanted
so we're
to.
not endorsing it at this meeting.
No.
Correct.
Yes, but then we're in trouble
Yeah, because we're not
because
endorsing
how do we get it to the grant people?
Well, I think we just heard from the director. Sorry, that my listening was that can't go in until the November decision, and this could come to us in November as well.
So, yeah.
So I understood from the director. Sorry, CEO. Was
I think that's correct.
That's my understanding.
That was the understanding I formed from the answer. So
Yeah.
it's not as if further clarify, it's not as if the building design and grant application process will now wait until this is done. In effect, if I could be so brazen, the building, if it's a box, can slide around the edge of the oval a little without changing its form very much. I could be entirely wrong. Can I ask the director if is that the case? I wasn't entirely wrong.
The question is, do we have to put in the proposed master plan as presented in attachment 1?
I just asked the amender.
If that provides greater clarity, I'm happy for that to be put in.
So what's in parentheses? To make it really clear, that's the one.
Yeah.
Thank you. So I was just in the process of putting that to the elected members. We have the mover happy to incorporate, the second is happy to incorporate, and I see leave of the meeting in favour of incorporation of that change. Yep, thank you. That's carried. Discuss incorporated becomes part of the motion. I think you've run out of time, Councillor Groot. Oh, pretty sure. Okay. Councillor Barnett, you were next on my list, and then Deputy Mayor.
Yes, well, mine's been sort of answered with the incorporated amendment, because I was just wanting to make sure that we could make sure that for the grant that what we put in wasn't set in concrete, and that this next step could happen. Right, so I'm reasonably comfortable with that.
Yes, I believe, fortunately, that the design we have has complete flexibility around that entire western boundary. And yes, not all councils have that joy, or even our sites. That's that all you had, Councillor Barnett? Okay, thank you. Deputy Mayor?
Yes. Well, I must say I was looking forward to an historic occasion there, being the first remotely joining member to move an amendment to that motion, but I was gazumped by the former Deputy Mayor, Mark Groot, who's obviously hogging the centre stage there directly in front of the Mayor. Anyway, having said that, I've got over that pretty quickly. Wait till I get back to Adelaide. I think I definitely support the amendment, and I think we've definitely missed a step there. We had the great session with David Cook 2 weeks ago, and it took us until Friday to go and speak to the key stakeholder there, being the Broadview Football Club. I definitely think that we've missed a step there to pick up their feedback, and also other targeted people who've got a vested interest. So I'm glad that that's been incorporated into the motion. That sort of sets that's going to happen. So thank you, former Deputy Mayor Groot, for raising that amendment, raising your amendment. Yes.
Shucks. Thank you, Deputy Lord Mayor. Thank you for tuning in. Do we have any further debate? Councillor Nguyen.
Just a comment. I put up the workshop notes from the 18th of August,
And under the next steps, it does say that further consultation with key stakeholders is what we will do next. And then the following workshop on the 13th of August, it does again say continue stakeholder engagement. So I was kind of disappointed that that didn't happen, but thank you, Councillor Grigg, for bringing up the amendment. I think, yeah, it's something really important that we've missed, and I'm glad it's been picked up.
Thank you. Those notes. That's why they're not published. No, I'm just joking. But thank you for picking that up. Very good of you. Any further debate? Councillor Ripp, you need to sum up.
Yeah, I will. Look, I'm pleased to know that if we do this targeted consultation, it doesn't, I've heard from the administration, it doesn't put at risk in terms of the endorsement of the plan and for state grants. So I think it's a win-win situation. And thank you to the former Deputy Mayor, who actually is present in the chamber with us, for moving this amendment.
Point of order. Point of order.
Your point of order, Councillor, former Deputy.
Whereas the current Deputy Mayor is called the Deputy Lord Mayor, yet I'm only ever referred to as the former Deputy Mayor.
Section of the Act.
19.
That's not at all applicable to Section 9.
129, sorry.
Yeah, bins. Anyway, no, overruled.
But look, obviously this will lead to, it's a win-win situation. So thank you for that amendment, and thanks to the administration for clarifying that up. I am also disappointed that I did only hear tonight that some of the key stakeholders are only told about this on Friday and told about, you know, the location of the hub. So I find that a little bit, you know, disappointing, particularly when we're trying to make this type of decisions. I would have liked them to be notified about that earlier, but that's just my view. Look, we'll clarify it over the next few weeks with this targeted consultation, and we'll get a really good outcome. So looking forward to it.
Thank you. That concludes debate. All those in favour? Against? That's carried unanimously. Sorry, Deputy Mayor, can I just confirm you're voting in favour? I presume so, yeah, that's right. It's just there's a slight delay, so I just wanted to make sure. Item 10.4, Prospect Gardens, Nanu Wirra place-based results of consultation. Somebody happy to move it in its current form to go back out to consultation effectively?
Let's try to load it, sorry.
Page 142. Councillor Ripp, wish to speak to it?
Look, just briefly to thank everyone for their feedback during the consultation period, and to also thank former Councillor Standard, if he's here, gone, but for his presentation as well, coming with the PowerPoint, I thought was quite interesting to one of our last meetings. But yeah, look, the feedback's been really good through this. I've had some excellent reports, and I'm pretty happy and comfortable to move all three items tonight.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder?
I'm happy to second it.
Councillor Barnett.
And I'm pleased that we've got lots of consultations happening there.
Yeah, thank you. Any further debate? Councillor De Backer.
Yeah, there was only one thing I was a bit concerned about. I know we had talked in the workshop about the ability to include some actual sort of dinosaurs or creatures that used to live in the sort of Adelaide Plains areas in prehistoric times, or something, or fish, or whatever it used to be. Was there any mention or any follow-up on the fact that this could be included as part of the concept and just sort of Dino the dinosaur? Maybe it's a question through the chair.
It was a bit more sophisticated than Dino. CEO?
Yeah, through your chair to the director.
Through the chair, yes, we did note that from the workshop.
Yeah.
And I just can't find it at the moment, but there is reference to making contact with SA Museum about how we can relate local items to it. Sorry, I just can't find it.
I couldn't find it in what was presented, so I just hope it's captured, because I think it's a good learning opportunity, and it's authentic as well.
Definitely noted, thank you.
Thank you. Any further debate? No, that being the case, Councillor Ripp, just seeing you need to sum up. No, that concludes debate. All those in favour? Against is carried. Look forward to seeing how that goes in the second round. Lots of changes incorporated in response to good feedback. 10.5, JW Ratley Park upgrade, recommendations, page 189. Somebody happy to move it in its current form? Councillor Groot, wish to speak to it?
I will just very briefly. I think it's fair to say, like many residents, I think a lot of people were fairly underwhelmed by the upgrade of that particular park. and not just physical upgrades, but the sort of the painting and a few other bits and pieces. I'm pleased that we're going back to have another go at it. I would encourage administration very strongly to undertake really strong or really thorough consultation or genuine consultation, particularly with the neighbours directly associated to the park. They missed out on some of this process last time, and after making it quite well known that they did want to be part of that consultation, it kind of happened despite them wanting to be involved in the conversation about what's going to go in the park, and in particular what's going to go near boundary fences near their properties, which is obviously a bit of an issue when we live next door to a park that's openly accessible 24 hours a day. I think there are some good things in here. Again, this is going out for consultation. I think it's a good thing to do. Let's talk to community and get it right this time. But I'm always very supportive of what we do as a council. I just think this one we did get it a little bit wrong, but we're fixing it. So I think that's a good news story out of that tonight.
You have a seconder. Councillor Backer, do you wish to speak to us?
Yeah, I do. Look, I was, again, a bit dismayed. We put a musical instrument in there, which has since been removed, because people were playing it all times of day and night. Who'd thought? And also, I'm just looking at page 194 and a little bit underwhelmed about the proposed new play equipment, which just looks like an open teepee with nothing to climb on. And I think one of the things that I think we've been saying again and again is the opportunities for bigger kids to be able to play on things that are a bit challenging. And I'm just wondering if it's still going to, so if this is what's been going out to consultation, you might get people that are saying, well, where's the slide and the big climbing pole? But I'll let the community say that instead of me.
You? Any further debate?
Yes.
So, Barnett.
Yes, with all due deference to the artist or the artwork, I think very early on there was some suggestion that perhaps the park would be a bit more relevant to being, like with the people or some connection with the the cemetery, or something related a bit more to the history, perhaps. I don't know, like we have the history wall down on the other estate. So I guess that was, to me, and some other residents there, some other councillors have noted. So I don't know, whether that's something for a bit further on down the track, and see what happens with the community consultation.
Thank you. Just from my point of view, I had several discussions with the director and the CEO about this upgrade. Upgrade written in small letters, not big letters anywhere, because it's just underwhelming. Is probably a compliment. In particular, the play equipment has been diminished. I understand that was in response to the neighbours who said, I don't want people looking over my backyard, so therefore you get a 2-foot high platform which is super safe and doesn't allow people to look over the yard, but is not much fun for kids. I look forward to seeing what the next round of consultation says, because the teepee thing doesn't have a falling risk, so it's okay to go on the harder, gravelly stuff. If you want to put it on higher up, it's going to induce some sort of softball. But even a platform only 300 high would be better than nothing. And I've seen plenty of those TP structures elsewhere and been completely underwhelmed by them myself. But I'm not a kid anymore, so I have to defer to the judgment of others in that sense. But I was most upset about the size of the plants, and I spent more than a couple of hours trying to dig them out of the mulch, because they're so tiny that a dog or a kid just kicks the mulch over the top of the plant and they're dying. We've lost half the plants in the park. So completely false economy that we've paid for plants, paid for them to be installed, and now they're dead. And now we're going to be asked, through this to pay for more plants to go in. And I find that particularly irksome, because our ratepayers' money's hard fought and we're responsible for it, and we've wasted it. And I find it particularly upsetting. On top of that, the whole park design this is a difficult park. Let's not get this wrong. It's not designed to have big equipment in it because of its size. We have a hierarchy of parks. I get all that, but I do think that it could be more beautiful than it is, and there's no planting shown at all down the left-hand side until you get right down by the back fence. And even then, I don't know, I just thought we could have done a lot better. In terms of the mural, I thought this was a difficult one to get a mural right on the fences. I think it's good to do a mural, get some art into the park. I think the flowers and a relationship to a cemetery there's kind of a link there. And it's better than my idea of having headstones coming up and zombies being painted on the fence. I thought that was fun, but, you know, maybe not so much after a while. I think flowers won over my ideas. But it did look a bit unfinished, and I think that we didn't anticipate that because the design the artist provided showed it being outlines and only some coloured in. So it was a bit hard to reconcile that design concept with the finished result, which looked unfinished. So that's been filled in a bit more, but it's not designed to be filled in entirely. So if we get some consultation feedback that says that should also be filled in, we need to consider, we have to re-engage the artist to do that, but that wasn't the original idea. I just hope it can be lush, if not straight away, then certainly in time with enough plants to do justice to that, that the equipment's useful, that people want to take their kids there, and I really look forward to the staff working out how to engage with local kids so we hear their feedback, not just the neighbours' feedback or the adults' feedback. So unfortunately, we've got to take two. I don't like doing that, but here we are. So any further debate? Councillor Nguyen.
Just a question, when will the consultation take place?
Take that question, CEO.
Yeah, through you, Chair, to the...
Chair, late November to December.
Thank you. Anything further, Councillor Nguyen? Thank you. Any further debate?
Look, just to say, obviously, the park being in Nailsworth, I've had a number of residents in my ward mention it to me as well and saying that they're disappointed with how underwhelming it was, but they're happy that we're obviously taking on board people's feedback and obviously here where we are tonight. So it is good that we are having a second crack at it. But I also encourage the staff. I know, as the CEO's mentioned, it's a resourcing issue, but we also do need to look at how we better utilise and capture people's feedback from social media and residents' feedback as well. If it is a resourcing issue, bring it back to us and let's look at that, because we need to be capturing residents' feedback on social media, not just putting it in the too hard basket. So if it is a resourcing issue, we need to look at that further.
Thank you. Any further debate? We've lost the Deputy Mayor. Someone contact him and let him know that he's... Oh, he's chosen to... Okay, thank you. I didn't see any little box or anything there. So there he is. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Any further debate? No? Back to Councillor Groot. Do you wish to sum up?
No, thanks.
Okay, that concludes debate. All those in favour? Against is carried. Look forward to the feedback. Item 10.6, Annual Community Grants Program, 2020-2021. Recommendations on page 210, 211. Somebody happy to move it as presented to us? Councillor Barnett.
Yes, along with Councillor Twee and myself, we were on that group just reviewing with staff, and just like to draw your attention to that's the tennis club, if we can just scroll up. With that one, the way it was presented, it's about to do the painting and things like that, but we raised some queries about this, Councillor Twee and I, and subsequently the staff have investigated with the tennis club, and just so that elected members have the same sort of information we and I have had just in the last day, that money for painting, it's not just particularly painting, but it's to encourage volunteers in the club and to try and encourage them, a bit more participation of some of the younger members. So just thought that so that we all have the same information about that. But happy, there's some really great projects, applications, activities sort of taking place. So happy to commend it to Council.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Nguyen, wish to speak to it?
Just given we were in COVID time, like we got quite a few people, organisations applying for it, so that was really fantastic. Just like what Councillor Barnett said, overall very happy with all the applicants that put in. It was just the tennis club, but at the last minute altering what they want to do with that money. So we were very in favour of all these applications.
Okay, thank you. Any further debate? Councillor De Backer.
Again, I'd just like to congratulate two councillors on the panel, and I think it's a really important program, and it also demonstrates, I guess, what we're looking towards doing more of in our strategic plan, which is facilitating more community outcomes with small amounts of seed money, because we actually get the community gets a huge amount of value for small amounts of money, and I think it's a great program. So thank you again.
Thank you. Councillor Group.
I just have one question in relation to the grant application for Operation Flinders. So it has got conditional support. I know over the years we've considered and not considered these applications. They come through fairly regularly. I notice the condition is that correspondence to Operation Flinders to confirm whether or not the young person residing in the City of Prospect attends. Am I right in assuming that if there's not a young person from the City of Prospect attending, then it wouldn't be approved? Or is it? I'm just trying to understand that approval process.
See ya. Through you, Chair, to the Director.
Through the Chair, that was my recollection. I'm just looking at the exact wording now to see if there's anything that stumbles. But my recollection from the discussion was this is, in order to really be eligible, it's about the benefit to City of Prospect. And whilst Operation Flinders does great work, no one's disputing that. To be eligible for a grant, it really needs to benefit City of Prospect residents. So the correspondence would go to the City of Prospect residents involved.
So that was going to be my next part of my speech around how this is about our local community. So sorry to ask a process question, but does that mean we give them the money if there's a young person from Prospect, or do we give them the money if there's not, they return it to us? Because it's $2,000, which could go to a number of the other local groups.
Director.
Yeah, through the Chair, based on how we would look to run this process and the wording that we've provided, it would essentially be that money, if there wasn't a Prospect resident involved, that money just wouldn't go.
Okay.
To Operation Flinders. And it wouldn't, based on any wording in here, there's no opportunity to reallocate. That being said, there's not a lot of groups that missed out as well.
Yeah.
About the right demand and supply for this year.
Okay. Thank you. No, I'm happy with that.
Any further debate? Councillor Barnett, do you wish to sum up?
No, I think with number 2, the Operation Flinders, I mean, this has come up nearly every time that they've applied. So our little group thought that this was the best way to do it. So that's how we arrived at it.
Okay. Thank you. That concludes debate. All those in favour? Against? Is carried unanimously. Item 10.7, the Local Government Association South Australia Youth-Led Recovery Grant submitted. Recommendation page 252 has been withdrawn by the CEO. Brief explanation, CEO.
Simply, we discovered that we hadn't been successful.
So
Sadly.
So to prevent us debating about whether we should or shouldn't apply, it's easy. You can get it. Okay, so it's been withdrawn. 10.8, Draft Disability Access and Inclusion Plan 2020 to 2024. Somebody happy to move it as per page 254?
Yes.
Councillor Barnett, do you wish to speak to it?
Only to say that prior that we had a workshop session with, I forget the person's name from the disability. Yes, and I think that was very informative to council. And as part of that, we've actually looked in our draft strategic plan and about how we look at some things there to do with sight, disability and print, things like that. So I endorse, I'll ask council to endorse the plan, the draft plan.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Group, do you wish to speak to it?
Look, just to mirror what Councillor Barnett has said, this is a really important part of our business as council and our business as part of the community. So I'm excited that we've got to this point. and certainly support the motion and the recommendations in the paper tonight.
Just from my perspective, I agree with all of that. I'm particularly pleased that the Mayor's Forum I set up for disability has given rise to this in some way, shape or form. The last one turned into the consultation focus group, if you like, which was a really good adaptation of that forum. I'm really pleased that one of the recommendations is that we form a reference group, and all the people that were there and the ones from the previous one who couldn't get to this current, the most recent one, would be more than willing to be part of that reference group. I have to say, I've never met a bunch of people who are more willing to give of their time and ideas, and they're the mob of people that I've met with never complained less, despite the fact they have obvious things to complain about. It really is a wonderful bunch of people, and they have extraordinary skills amongst them, which obviously our challenge is to work out how to tap into those skills and make benefit of them and make them feel like they're contributing. But they are willing and able bunch of people who would be very happy to help us do the best we can where we can. So I commend that aspect to you in particular. I also like the annual report requirement that's embedded in the framework that we're being asked to put out for consultation, and that report goes off to a government department, but I presume it also come here, CEO, to us, because I think we'd all be interested in what we've done. And one annual report can serve two recipients, of course. So I look forward to seeing that, because that was a discipline that the staff got into at the Mayor's Forums that present what we'd done up until that current forum, which was a useful insight into the sorts of investments we've made and improvements we've made. So yeah, I think it's really good. I'm happy to commend it and look forward to the type of consultation feedback that we get. Any further debate? If not, Councillor Barnett, do you wish to sum up?
No, just noting that the Mayor has put up a motion on notice about inclusive park picnic tables. And I remember we now have some around our city, and that came out of one of the state governments, a previous state government's neighbourhood funding thing, where people were asked to, we missed out on everything, but a few of us councillors were keen to have the, some inclusive picnic benches. So looking forward to that, and hopefully thank the Mayor for this motion later on.
Like the foreshadowing. Thank you. All those in favour? It is carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 10.9, Prospect District Cricket Club request for fee waiver 2020 to 2021. Recommendations on page 300. Somebody happy to move it in its current form? Councillor Pearce?
Yes, I'm happy to move.
Deputy Mayor is...
Sorry, Deputy Mayor is waving more erratically than you, Councillor Pearce, if that's okay. Deputy Mayor?
Erratically. I'll have to take a waving lesson, I guess. Yeah, I'd like to move this motion. Yes, I would.
You should speak to it.
I will speak to it, yeah. So a couple of things. Hindsight's a wonderful thing. I know that we discussed what might happen to summer sports when we made the decision to waive fees for winter sports. And in hindsight, we probably should have considered a budget allocation that we could call upon if required, and then not call upon it if not required. But we didn't do that because no one really knew what was going to happen back in the day when we made that decision. So having said that, and on the understanding that this will require, there are no funds for this and it will require a budget variation, there's no reason why the cricket club should not be afforded the same as the winter sports. I think that's fair. The trick that what we've probably got to think about is where we put a stop to this, because what we probably really wouldn't want is the same thing being repeated by summer and winter sports in the next season, calling that COVID's had an impact and so on and so forth. So I want to move it to get it on the table. I'm in support of it, but I'm keen to hear what the other elected members have to say as well.
Thank you. Councillor Pearce, you happy to second?
Yeah, happy to second, yeah.
Did you wish to speak to it?
Yeah, I've got a little handout here, so I just want to talk to that, so I'll probably just pass them down there. I haven't got one for the Deputy Mayor, unfortunately. You two chaps over there, want one?
Yes. Was that to anyone in particular, Councillor?
You got long arms, man.
Yeah, jeez. Okay. Fire away, Councillor.
Yes, so look, I was curious just to sort of ascertain what sort of bank balances Prospect Cricket Club had. So I found this Treasurer's report on their web. It only goes back to the latest is 2018-19, but look at the third paragraph of the first Treasurer's report. They mention that they've got in a healthy cash position. Well, I'm not quite sure I agree with that, but the previous year they had a cash position of 41, so they've had deficits of 15,000 for the last 2 years. So the cash position is slowly dwindling away. Now from last year's deficits, the bar profit last year was 10,000. Now they haven't opened all year, so that 10,000 is gone. The sack of funds, they normally get $50,000, which is mentioned in the report. They're only getting maybe 50% of that. So their position's pretty ordinary. When you look at, if you go on past years, they'll have a deficit of the 15 plus another 35,000. So they're in dire straits really, and desperately need for this to be waived. So I'm heavily in support of the recommendation.
Thank you. Any further speakers? Councillor De Backer.
Yeah, look, I'd like a bit more of a creative solution to how we're looking at some of these fee waiving. So I think, Prospect, we are a creative community, and I think we need to look at how we use spaces and places differently. So, I mean, these people are in a lucky position. They actually have a bar. Imagine having your own bar in your club. I mean, how brilliant is that? I've never been for a drink there. Never been invited there. Not that I
Don't need to be invited.
Well, I didn't know that. So I think there's an opportunity for these clubs to think a little bit differently about how they use these spaces. So I think what the Deputy Mayor said before about keen to hear what other people think and looking at how other summer sports and potentially into next year some of these clubs are going to operate. I think there's a great opportunity to connect with their community in different ways. I mean, I might never play for the Prospect Cricket Club, but I could be a friend of the Prospect Cricket Club. I don't know what their beer prices are like, or if they have craft beer nights or, quiz nights or that kind of thing. So I think there's a really, maybe I think going back to them, it's like, well, yes, we're considering waiving in this instance, but how are you going to be creative about how you open up your facilities to our community? Because this might be a one-time deal. So I don't know how we have that conversation, or if it's maybe a workshop that we can do with our sporting groups, with our network Prospect or something like that, to get some different ideas about how we use these spaces, because I think there's a better solution in it for all of us.
Thank you. Councillor Barnett.
Yes. I'm just thinking in terms of disability access, and that's one thing that club, ever since it was built, suffers from. So I think taking up Councillor De Backer's thing, I mean, there could be a useful sort of, I don't know, maybe not a workshop or whatever, but some way where we can, come up with some like a brains, trust thing, to try and see what some solutions. I don't know. Yes, but who knows? I mean, I think at one stage there we had funding a few years ago, and they did a fantastic event on the Oval, and like a fete or a whatever, Yeah, so I think it is easy, most probably, to come to council and say ask for a fee waiver. I'm thinking most probably we may have to actually do it as the report, the motion says this time. But I think if they're continually going into a sort of deficit, it's most probably just fairly reasonably typical of a lot of clubs, around the place that rely heavily on volunteers as well, and being a seasonal sport possibly as well. So I don't know whether it's useful to have like a sports council and see if is this typical of what's happening. You know, should we as council be more aware of what's happening with our clubs, and can we be work cooperatively and creatively? You know what I mean? Yeah, so it'd be something I think well worth considering.
Okay. Further debate?
Just very briefly, I support the motion tonight. I do have a question, though, about whether there are other sporting clubs that we've not thought about yet who will be in a similar boat. And going back to the current Deputy Lord Mayor's comment about, where do we draw the line under fee waivers related to COVID? We might choose to do them for other reasons. But it'd just be good. I might ask it as a question, because the answer might be that someone will take it on notice and get back to us on it. Are there other clubs in this position where we're likely to either be in receipt of a fee waiver request, so we can plan forward for that? I'll ask that as a question.
CEO, just back in time. Thank you, Chair. Through you to the Director of Corporate Services.
Through the Chair. To this day, we haven't had requests to waive or resolution on any fees and charges of our sporting. The council has waived the whole fees and charges through the COVID package. All the winter sports, the 4 winter sports, 5 actually, has been waived for this particular through the COVID package. However, the report to the April Council, we have actually indicated that Council may consider any future relief should impact some sporting clubs. So that is what's included, and that's what is coming forward. Doesn't have any other additional.
Thank you.
Okay. So the question is really, do we know how many summer clubs there are that could ask for a waiver? Maybe I'll ask it that way.
Can I just preface that answer that we'll get from a director by saying, no matter who the others are, they're very small lease fees in relation to this. They're $1,200 maximum, I think, for the bowling club, maybe. There are others, tennis clubs and the like, but I'm sure happy to refer them to the director.
Yeah, we can provide the list, but yeah, I'm not aware. I haven't got on top of my head how many.
No. And look, I didn't expect anyone would, but maybe if that could be provided to us separately, maybe the number of summer sport clubs and the total quantum of the lease, so we know. As you say, they might total $20,000 altogether, in which case it's not really material. But I'd be interested just to know what they are. But very much support this. This is an important club for us. But picking up some of Councillor Backer's points, I think are really valid. Like, I've not been there yet either, and you're right, probably don't need an invite, but I haven't rocked up either, so that's on me. But maybe it'd be good for us to do that as a collective at some point too. Support the club.
Further debate? Councillor Nguyen.
I'm happy to support the recommendation as well. I don't think it will hurt for us to have a conversation with the club. It could open opportunities, and working with them and building on that relationship, I think it create maybe space or projects or whatever it is. So I do encourage that we have that conversation with them.
Yep, happy to support the recommendations. I think having those conversations with the club are really important. Some good points raised tonight. I mean, I actually do, having a look at these financials, not seeing them before, but I mean, COVID aside, obviously we need to do this for the club. But I am concerned that year on year they are losing considerable amounts. I mean, 15,000 per year is not. I mean, considering the cash they've got in the bank's not. It's quite a large amount. So I'd be quite interested to look at different ways we could support the club, particularly with profiling. I didn't even know they had a bar there. So I thought, again, I mean, that communication is really important, because if I knew it was there, I'd probably go down and I don't know if they do meals or not, but I'd be happy to go down and have a meal there if they did, but again, we just don't know. So I'd welcome any opportunity to have a conversation with them.
Excellent. Thank you. Any further debate? I think anyone's left. No. Deputy Mayor, do you wish to sum up?
Thank you, Mayor Lachlan. I will. So there was some, whilst we're talking about a waiver of their fees due to COVID, there were some quite good points made tonight, which I think form the basis of a separate discussion. The next item on the agenda is the draft leasing and licensing policy, which kind of fits in with the future of a lot of sporting clubs and what we are going to be asking them to potentially do and so on and so forth. Clubs have got to be careful that they stick to their core business and not get too distracted by a range of other things. And I guess as councils, we've also got to be, we've got to know what our role is and what our role isn't. If you look at what we do for small business, we do a fair bit through Network Prospect. If we look at what we do for sporting clubs and community groups, I guess we could ask ourselves the question, are we doing enough? And is it our role to actually step in and help? So I think there was some really good discussions that came out of the around the table tonight. So thanks to the people who contributed. I'll be, as with everybody else, supporting this motion. Full stop.
Please debate. All those in favour? Against? It's carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 10.10, as just foreshadowed, draft leasing and licensing policy recommendations on page 305. It's quite detailed. Could I just have just a quick show of hands? How many of you had some suggestions or questions about it? And if there's a number, I'll seek to suspend meeting procedures. Has anybody got any issues they wish to raise? Yes, one's the discussion. Yeah. I might do that just to be safe, otherwise it's going to get a bit messy in debate, I think. Seek to suspend meeting procedures until 8:45. Should be needed. All those in favour? Against? It is carried. And in doing so, just to note that the work done by the staff to bring this back to us, this has been a long journey, and along the way, I can't help but feel that we've been responsible for some of the delays because our expectations keep lifting this, and it has been a bit confusing. This is the best I've seen it presented back to council, and I think we're getting pretty close. There's no schedule of fees per club here, which I thought was one of the things that tripped us up before. So in the consultation process, I wondered whether we should bite the bullet and have that fee schedule or wait for that obvious question to come from people. And I'm not quite sure how to deal with that. But I had a few other things too I wanted to discuss, but perhaps we could just start and see who's, perhaps Alison, if you'd like to kick off.
Yeah, it was just around the sinking fund and it being tied to some of the other documents. Fine, just to make sure that there is an understanding of what is expected, I guess. So just, I guess, seeing all the documents right through and tying people to that sinking fund, that was really the key thing for me.
I'm not sure, Simon, whether you want to comment on how that all works, how that all stitches together.
We've renamed the sinking fund the Community Facility Improvement Fund.
Right.
Thank you.
Good.
So that's the first thing. It's not mentioned in the policy per se in great detail. It's more in the agreement. That's under 7.5. I did get preempted that this question would be asked, so I've got a bit of a technical response. But council will support the tenant to establish a community facility improvement fund in addition to or in lieu of fees. In these circumstances, council will assist the tenant to determine the purpose of the fund and develop a maintenance or improvement plan with key targets and timelines. Thus, prior to going to the establishment of the community fund, council will sit down with the tenant and agree the establishment of the fund with a clear understanding of what the fund is planned to be, what the fund is planned to be used for, i.e. court resurfacing or new kitchen, and when it will take place. Then we'll agree on amounts, timing of payments, where fees be held, and how it will be annually reviewed. It will be in the lease agreement, not the policy. Council have further discretion to add how the fund will be managed and enforced, thus keeping the policy at a higher level and less legal language.
Is it possible to reference it in brackets so it does refer back? I'm just cognizant that the same language is referred to in both documents.
Sure.
The other thing that I'm also aware for is like the community facility improvement fund is a dollar value, and for a lot of our quick question. For a lot of our organisations, a lot of the way they contribute is labour costs. So it's like we'll paint that wall or we'll do the gardening or that kind of thing. Sometimes when we get unstuck, it's like, okay, we can do the at grade stuff, but some of the big stuff like, air conditioning systems that don't work or, kitchen facilities that need upgraded, how do we make sure that the dollar value and the labour value is kind of half-half so we don't sort of miss those big things that keep coming back to us in grant applications?
To your first point, item 2 of the recommendation says subject to minor administrative amendments. So I think that's something we could make it as a minor amendment, make further reference in the policy to the fund. How can the fund be directed in kind rather than dollar amount? Something I'll consultant to assist us with this. I'm happy to ask them to help us how we can word that into it. To incorporate in-kind funding rather than just the dollar amount.
Yeah.
If that's the wanted concept.
I'd be interested to hear other people's thoughts.
Yeah, it's a tricky one, isn't it? Because they could say, well, we've saved up 200 hours, which we think is worth $3,000. So could you match our $3,000 with cash? Hang on a minute. I think I've been stitched up. So just
Flipping it the other way, so when you go with an agreement saying, okay, we need stands or we need air conditioning or whatever, that's going to require dollars because we need to pay professionals to do it. However, garden maintenance, that's your responsibility. We don't do it, but we recognise that has a value. So I guess it's just capturing that in some of the discussions.
I think this is the balance between things they're obligated to do because we give them such a cheap lease. Say, for instance, bowling club, vast tract of land, 3 fields and the big clubhouse and sheds, and they're paying a pretty nominal figure really for that real estate. But it's on the basis that they take care of the greens and the lighting costs and the watering costs and all the running costs, which are substantial. But they're also responsible for repainting and everything else. And we pick up when the shed falls over or the roof leaks or plumbing breaks. So there is a recognition, in a sense, in the current structure of the leases that they will be contributing in kind to doing all those things. I think you're right, though. If it's air conditioning that they want to add as an improvement, or a big screen, or a PA system, or the bowling club changed to LED lighting, which is vastly superior to what they had, that's cash out the door. And I think that's where I'm attracted to the sinking fund by a longer name that's harder to remember. That's something that we could seek to match, would be the simplest way.
In dollars.
Yes, yeah, and not get us mixed up in the stuff which they're already supposed to do anyway. Yeah. Sorry, Christina?
Yes, I think these ideas are certainly worth pursuing. I haven't had a chance to read the Onkaparinga that's mentioned in the report, their report through the LGA research. So or can we be given that link? Can we to have a look at?
Or Tracy from Simon, because you're on that committee, weren't you, Simon?
I'll send through a link.
Christine?
I'm happy to send through a link tomorrow to that tool. Yeah. The same consultant that created that document, which is now best practices of Australia, is the same consultant we've used.
Yes.
Not by coincidence.
Yes. And I think it would be good for us to aim at best practice. Mm-hmm. And the other thing is that some clubs may have a membership base, that lends itself more to volunteer in kind stuff, or they have good sponsorship and things like that. I think we need, as we are, I think moving here, working towards being improving our game plan as landlords, basically. But I think that it's good that a lot of our clubs have moved to have like solar panels I know with one club I'm involved in, that's almost the electricity bill has just gone down. So I think if we can look at all those sort of ways and means, that'd be quite good. So I hope we're moving into the more of a 21st century approach to this, which I think we are. Judging by the comments, it'd be good again to have another perhaps workshop, or I think we, like you did, Mayor, with the disability group. Then it seems to me we have a missing component that we don't have this with our sports groups.
Yes, that's
so
good.
Perhaps that's something we could be looking at and seeing how can we all collectively work together to make our sporting clubs and all the volunteers connected with it and whatever, really work together and improve things.
Okay, thank you. I just want to try and rein this into comments about the policy and leasing document, because that's what we'll be asked to move or not move in a second. I might just kick off with my stuff and then I'll go back to see if there's anyone else, because I'm interested in this community facility improvement fund, because I agree with Alison that I couldn't quite see it linked strong enough through the document in terms of it says we'd like you to have one, but it doesn't say that you have to bother or compel you or give you enough of incentive to actually start one. And I thought some of the things that could be enhanced to make that work are at 783 on page 317. Sorry, page 317 in the policy, where it talks about single-use hire, which a number of elected members have said these spaces are empty. Can you please fill them up? Just because you've got the keys. They're meant to open doors, not lock the doors, so to speak, right? It says, item 783 says at council's discretion, tenants may receive a discount or contribution to their community facility improvement fund for activating single-use hire. I thought the principle's there, but I can't see where the mechanism is. So someone says, well, I leased it out once in the 12 months, so therefore can I have my grant doubled or something silly like that? And we'd say, that's just crazy. And they go, well, hang on. 783 says, I activated a single-use hire. So it'd be nice if we could flesh that out a bit more and say, well, what do we mean? If it's not in the policy, is it in the lease or is it in the schedule? And I'll come to how that might work in a second. But I think that's a really good indicator of how that sinking fund might be seen favourably by council. In terms of the page 322, facility utilisation is in that little table there, which is how you do the annual review. I thought that was good, but again, it's a tick box. So one casual hire to the president's child's 18th birthday party might tick that box. I thought, well, that's probably not fulfilling the spirit of what we were looking for. How do we tighten that up? I don't have an easy answer for that. So then I'd turn to the actual lease document at page 335. Try and get into this community facility improvement fund and just join the dots through these documents. And it says 751 says the council may require the lessee to establish a fund to fund provision for major items of repair or maintenance to the premises. I thought, well, how do we work out when we may or may not? Is that up to the officer who's talking to the club? Which to me is it's a bit too discretionary. And I wonder whether we should say will. And what's in question is the size of it, not the may or may not. Because I think officers, that's a pretty big decision to give to an officer, and they might think, well, hang on, you've given me discretion and the club's just put up a cogent argument, so I'm happy to kind of acquiesce and say no. Whereas we sort of want to encourage this stuff a lot. So I wondered about the use of the word may. Then the explanation of what to use it for in 754(1), 2, 3 and 4 looked pretty good until you get to council discretion. And again, I don't know the easy answer. I think we should have some discretion, but I think it just needs a bit more shaping. And I thought maybe part of the answer is in how we deal with this hiring out, or how we deal with the discipline around setting the fund up. In the meantime, on page 338, 9.3 in hiring of premises and subletting 9.2, we've got the old clauses which say you can't sublet it unless you get permission from council. So here we are encouraging people to do casual hire, but we're saying for each and every time you want to do a casual hire, you've got to come and ask us for permission. We seem to get in the way of giving them the ability to do it. And some of them have used that excuse to say, oh, well, we can't because we need to write to you. And I thought, oh, boy, we don't want to trip ourselves up. 9.3.
Isn't there, sorry to interrupt, Mary Lachlan, isn't there a line on one of the pages that says that if it's a casual hire, you don't have to come to council. It's only if it's a sublease. I think fairly early on in the document it states that. I'm pretty sure.
Well, if it is, it's in conflict with 9.3. So that stuff should be tied up. So if we're really keen to have lots of use, we should make the document read as if that's easy to do, not hard to do. And it might be better to have principles around how the casual hire should work rather than a come and see us every time, because that means, again, an officer has to assess that application and get back to somebody, and it's just a bit of a pain. And they'll obviously have questions like, well, are 18th birthday parties allowed or not allowed? I don't know. And we'll have another document. When we get to the schedule, which is right at the end there, and this is where the rubber hits the road in terms of what you're going to pay and how long it goes for and those sort of things. I think the Community Facility Improvement Fund is listed here, but there's no dollar amount. And I thought, well, this is tricky. How does somebody establish what that amount is? And there's no guidance given anywhere in the documents as to how even this council staff would assess what it is. And I really don't know how to deal with that. But at some point in time, somebody should work out what it is. And maybe it's the value of the building with a depreciation allowance to indicate some sensible number. And I think cost consultants have suggestions for sinking funds based on depreciation allowances. We could probably pinch a bit of advice from them. But give the tenant and the staff some guidance, because if they said $10 a year, you go, well, that's not enough. They said, well, what do you want? I don't know how we'd answer that. And I thought an item 11 might be good. And this goes right to the casual hire alternate use, which could be used in an application process for funding, where you demonstrate how much other use you've given this building. Item 11 might be, as you're signing the lease up, you indicate to us what proportion of time you need this facility for your own use, and therefore what proportion of time might be available for other uses, without committing them to having to hire it. But it might be a question like that goes in the schedule to say, well, if you want 100% use, you understand that there'll be no contribution to your sinking fund if you come to us. If you say, well, you think you're going to need it for 70% of the time, well, there's 30% that we can help you work out how to use Space to Go, which is in the documents. It's great, how to use it, and understand that will trigger the minimum threshold for us to double your sinking fund if we say that somewhere else in the document. So I thought we could just get the threads a bit more stitched up on this, and then get it in the schedule that there's some more concrete numbers to make this really take effect, and get away from it being notional and easy to not have. So they were my thoughts, but I'm interested in other people's thoughts around that, and probably particularly Matt, because you're in a situation where you're in a club, and whether that makes any sense or not to you. So I'm pretty keen to hear from you.
Yeah, thanks, Mary Lachlan. I guess from an overall perspective, do we have a review process built into this policy? Because we're introducing something significantly different, I think, than what we've had in the past, and we're trying to forecast how it might pan out. And it might be wise to consider including a review in 12 months' time, or 18 months' time, just to test our assumptions on what we thought was going to happen, and then allow us to make some revisions to the policy. So that's probably the first thing I'd say.
Sorry, Matt, just jump in while we're waiting on an answer on that question. I've realised I've gone past the suspension of meeting procedures time. Just seek your permission I seek leave of the meeting to extend the suspension till 9 o'clock. Should be needed. All those in favour? Against is carried. Sorry, did you want an answer to that, Matt? Well, we've.
Oh, it was a suggestion. There might be something in here that says that, but if there isn't, then it might be prudent to consider that.
Normally, once council endorses a policy, it's reviewed every 4 years, but I'd be happy to bring back a report to council after 1 year to say state of play, how it's gone, what suggestions, or if there are major changes required, obviously bring back a draft policy for revision.
So there's no fixed time frame other than the maximum recommended 4. We can bring it back at any time and change it. Okay, thank you. Matt?
Thank you. That sounds reasonable. Second point, I guess we should be working to a transition process to help clubs and community groups move from how they operate now to operating under a best practice circumstance in line with this policy, because it will take a while to get everything happening and in line with how we'd like it to be. Third point I'd like to make is that I think sinking fund is an entirely appropriate term because that's what it is. And the other term is long-winded and convoluted, and a sinking fund is a sinking fund. Anyway, that's just a minor point. I'm not going to die in a ditch over that. Fourth point is that some of these things are a bit chicken and egg. We don't know if we say, well, you should have I'm just going to say sinking fund because I can't recall the actual name we've given it. You need to have a sinking fund, and it's going to be difficult to determine what the sinking fund should be, given that we're encouraging clubs to potentially either sublet or go in favour of more casual hire. And given an increased amount of usage, for example, that's going to require more maintenance, carpets replaced more frequently, more likelihood for damages of a minor nature to occur, replacement of small fixtures and fittings and those kind of things like that. So it's not necessarily a straight line here. So how we navigate from where we are through to, kind of a new business as usual for these organisations is kind of interesting. I think you'd find that some clubs are quite organised already, and my own experience with the Charles Cone Reserve Sports and Social Club, which comprises of BOSA and also the Eagles, we have a sinking fund already, and we make funds available at the start of the year, which is drawn down upon for a range of small minor maintenance activities and so on and so forth. So I wouldn't underestimate the fact that clubs are, some clubs are quite organised and run quite well. So yeah, overall, it's for me, it's going to be an educational process and a support process to help clubs transition from one state to where we'd like all of our clubs to be. In general, I think the policy is good. It's getting a lot closer to something which is easier to understand. And then the key thing is going to be the educational process for the organisations to help them understand why it's beneficial for them to adopt the things that are being outlined and help them, change management. That's what a lot of this is going to be. It's going to be change management.
Thank you. Any other comments, Steve?
Just keen to hear the thoughts, particularly around the room, and Matt, particularly with the club you're involved in. Obviously, we don't want a situation of Year 3A happening again, and I think this is getting more close to where it needs to be. But I guess from a club's perspective, yes, they need to be careful of what users are coming into the space, what the activity is going to be for, and of course for maintenance. But I also don't want to hear of situations where, like, you've got a group like U3A that would have perfectly been able to fit into or their activities to the club that they approached. But I heard from them some of the fees that they were being quoted for some of that licensing for that single use hire was not great, and they weren't sort of being accommodated. So I guess, for a nutshell, from the administration, to how does this policy address, I guess, that U3A example? I'd be keen to hear.
Could I just add that the Prospect RSL has a new committee?
Yes, I understand that.
That were there when all that was happening have left the club, and there is a new policy
Yeah. Good on you.
So that's that club. But
And that's why I didn't want to.
It's a good question, but to make it more generic, if we lease someone a building facility for $1,000 a year and they start leasing out at $100 a day,
That's why I wasn't happy.
Are we troubled by that?
Could be.
And if they start making a windfall profit out of it, are we troubled by that? And so that's the first part of the question. And the second is, if we have a really good idea, how far can we go to getting them to accept that idea and that tenant, which is where we stumbled before? So there's two questions, Simon, there.
Well, and that's why I wasn't being too critical of the current Prospect RSL committee, but the former one, some of the things, were pretty disappointing, I think, from the former.
So let's take it in two parts. So I'm going to pick up Stephen's question correctly.
By default, this policy will increase certain tenants' fees a fair bit. The headlines could be 1,000% increase because they were paying virtually nothing before. But by increasing fees, encourages the tenant to lease it out because they need to recoup those funds.
Yes.
So that's a reason why.
Yeah.
It's a way of encouraging a tenant to make the space available for other people.
Yeah.
And previously there was no incentive; they were getting charged normal amount. We could have it for the whole time.
Yeah.
Your fee would be reduced on a proportional basis if you could, as the Mayor suggested before, and we might have to strengthen the wording up, encourage them to say what percentage of the time are you going to be using the facility. That means how much the facility will be available to other users as part of the lease agreement.
Yeah.
So if they make a windfall profit, what does our lease enable us to get some of that or limit that, or do we just say that's your gain?
So the stages, there you go.
There go.
And are any of our facilities at risk of being exploited like that? In which case, why aren't we leasing them out at that rate, I guess? But I can't think of one off the top of my head that would.
No, I can't.
Deputy Mayor's got a question.
Sorry, Deputy Mayor.
Just a question there in response to your question, Mayor. Considering the concept of exploitation, how does that differ from a club running a successful canteen, for example, and social functions and those types of things like that, and being profitable as a result of being well managed and well run? How do we distinguish what we're happy for clubs to achieve and what we're not happy for them to achieve through careful management?
I agree. There was just a visceral reaction to one club previously mentioned who wanted to charge $100 a day for another club to be there, and we all thought, hang on a minute, you're making like 10 times what you pay us in lease value. And
I think it's also that the space with the current committee's obviously got a different approach, but the previous committee there was ample space for U3A. And it was just sort of no, or then it was that type of fee. So, how do we, I guess, build it in where, and I guess it's all case by case because the activities of the club, you don't want it wrecking, if it's going to, say, wreck a lacrosse field or it's going to wreck a football field. It's all case by case. But, I really felt for U3A with their struggle just to get availability.
Come back to that other part of your question, which is, does this in any way help us make a strong suggestion to a club to accept a sublease? Because RSL will complete within their rights to say, we don't want them.
There's no incentive.
So
their fee will be higher. So you can negotiate. We have the capacity to negotiate. If you're going to sublease or make available to a certain percentage, you get a reduction in your annual fee.
How would that? Sorry, Mark.
So I'm not going to help answer that, but for me, there's also this side issue. So if we take the example we're talking about, hiring it out to a for-profit group or a political party for a rally is very different to hiring it to someone like U3A. So for me, I don't have a problem with someone saying it's $100 a day if it's to BHP to hold a shareholder.
Oh, yeah.
But I have a problem if it's for U3A.
Yes.
So that's another complication in that leasing conversation. Do we want to encourage good grassroots community use, or do we want to encourage private use and how much do we care about each in terms of how the market sets price?
And do we ask for a schedule of fees? Is that the way to deal with it? That
Possibly.
hire it out, you give us a schedule of fees, and we have to be comfortable with that.
Yeah. So you can't hire it for $100 a day to a community group that's fledgling, but you can if it's a for-profit
business.
And they're happy to pay that.
Yes. Yeah.
I think your points are all good, but I think I was involved at U3A at the time, and I didn't know the committee had changed, but I think they were deliberately charging $100 a day just so that they'd go.
Yes.
It was terrible. Now, I don't know what power we've got as a lessor to hear from a prospective hiree to say, well, we'll override what the lessee's saying to you. I don't know whether we've got that power.
That's my question. Now, I don't think we do we? In this, and do we want to have that power?
I think for examples like that, I think it wouldn't be a bad thing. But
if you have a schedule of fees, I mean, we've got a template for our facilities. It would make sense for them to come back with a similar schedule to say, okay, local community groups, not-for-profit groups, private hire. I mean, private hire, go for your life. If they can make it. But look, at the end of the year, if it's all private hire and the community clubs aren't getting in, well, that's obviously going to reflect in those discussions for the next term or whatever. So I'm quite happy with that.
And that's what's happened with the group that I mentioned. We are a public record here. But the group previously, so there is, a schedule of fees that has a lesser one for if you're a local group, a community group. If you're affiliated with that particular club, with their target group, a commercial one. That, if you're outside the prospect and it's commercial and blah blah blah. So I think that it is looking at having some reporting from the council. I think we mentioned some annual report. I mean, it could just be a page. It could be a paragraph.
Some oversight of some kind. Yeah. Okay. And can I just, because we're at 9 o'clock, well, nearly, can I just ask finally that the idea that we'd go out without having the proposed number for each club, pretty obscure trying to work it out from that. Is there some reason why we wouldn't say, tell us what you think about all the clauses and this new fee?
I'm happy as part of the individual letters that we send out, we personalise those letters with their, not showing everybody's, showing theirs.
Could I suggest then that we see those first, because we got spoken to when that came up before and relative to their current. So for some, whilst you could justify the new, the relativity of the old was, we had to try and explain that, and it was difficult. See, I'm wondering if there's enough here, got enough feedback that we don't ask for a mover tonight, and we'll leave this with you.
Well, through you, Chair. Look, there's a few things that, if you don't mind, me taking a couple of minutes. One is there's no reason for council to give a lease over its assets. These are your assets, council's assets. A lease gives them exclusive occupation. There's actually no reason to do that. You can give them a license. If you give them a license, you have a lot more control over what they do. Frankly, Chair, I don't think there's enough in this document to really control the bad behaviour or the unfortunate behaviour of those who are using council-owned premises. I think there's a lot of really good stuff, and I think Beringa and Simon and the committee's done a lot, but the disconnect between, for the want of a better words, a sinking fund having to be there. I think council's got to maintain its discretion while giving signals as to what we want to do. But I don't know for the life of me as a lawyer, why would we give anybody exclusive rights?
Just don't know.
The license.
Particularly when, like on page 309, that three of the tenancies virtually are 77,000 out of the 80. The other 15 are paying in total 5.5. So could you have leases for those big three?
Could do.
Licenses for the other 15. Have a bit of power.
It can be dealt with by licenses. And I think it's a great document, but there's not enough detail that really delivers what council's concerned about tonight.
Yeah. We've heard some pretty good feedback.
Very good feedback.
This is the closest I've seen it in years, I have to say. So I'm happy to say that. Are you okay, CEO, if we leave it with you at this point?
Indeed.
Is there any urgency
I wouldn't have thought so. I mean,
They're all rolling along, aren't they?
Rolling along at this stage.
we need to get it right.
Okay, sorry. Question, Councillor Bassett?
Just one more question. I'm always big on communication because I just look at this and go, oh, what does it mean for me? It clearly needs a frequently asked questions schedule. So what does this mean for me? What does this mean for me? Just like we've asked today, because I don't think from those documents people can piece together, not exactly whatever, but what does this mean? What does frequently asked questions?
And perhaps a forum, I hesitate to call it the Mayor's Sporting Club forum, but some forum might be good. Matt, you got your hand up?
Just on timing, there might not be some urgency, but if you think about the cycle of, we're talking predominantly around sporting organisations, but also community clubs, there is some sense in the timing of this with regards to budgeting and planning from those clubs' normal operation point of view. So I think we just need to be conscious of when we might decide to sort of launch this and say this is the policy now, because if we did that midstream, then you could potentially cause a fair amount of turmoil when budgets and planning and those types of things have already taken place for years. So whilst there might not be some urgent timing to get this done in the next 2 weeks, we probably should consider the timing of launching it and starting to implement.
I agree, and we might not implement it. It might be a recommendation we implement it in 21, 22.
Yeah.
Doesn't have to be next year.
Yeah. So can I suggest that I don't ask someone to move, we let it lie on the table. Staff come back to us across a number of matters with regard to the sinking fund and how it actually works, with the idea of the co-contribution by council, how that might work and be assessed, with a licence versus leases and who we would give a licence to and not offer a lease, and who we would give a lease to and they have a licence as well, the big ones. The fee schedule for the clubs, that there's an actual calculation made and we can see it relative to the current one, so we can see that. And perhaps a suggestion that, as per my item 11, tell us what percentage you intend to use it for and therefore what percentage might be available for others. And if it was leased to or casually hired out to others, what your fee schedule might be. So we've got some insight into how they're going to do it. Sorry.
Yeah, and I mean, following on from the CEO's comments, not sure what other people think, but I'm open to looking at just the licensing model and not leases as well. I mean, when you take, for example, Broadview Football Club, they're obviously really keen to get other users in their space, which is great. And moving forward, it'll be a benefit, and that they will probably be under a license arrangement anyway with the new build. And they're very open to having community groups in making it multi-use, and that will be a win-win for our community if we're going to invest money in the redevelopment and the master plan, and they're very open to have it making it a multi-use space. So I'm not against that idea at all of just looking at licenses. I'd like to see how that mechanism works. I'm not.
And spell it out in these documents.
Yes, I'm open to that.
Okay. Right. Well, thank you. There's been a good discussion. Thank you. I thought it was worth suspending meeting procedures to allow that and work out whether we could actually get it out or not. I don't think it's ready just yet, but it's very close. Item 10.11, update to external grants policy. Somebody happy to move it as it's presented on page 359?
Must be slow into. Sorry.
Now, do you wish to speak to it? Do I have a seconder? Sorry, Deputy Mayor, was that you saying no, you didn't wish to speak to it?
Yes, it was me saying no.
Okay, thank you. I do have a seconder, sorry.
I'm happy to second it.
Councillor Greg, do you wish to speak to it? Is there any further debate? If not, I'll call that straight away. All those in favour? Against is carried unanimously. Item 10.12, draft general purpose financial statements for year ending 30 June. Somebody happy to move them?
Yep, move that way.
Rip, do you wish to speak to them?
Not at this point.
Do I have a seconder? Councillor Groot, do you wish to, sorry, Deputy Mayor?
Happy for former Deputy Mayor Groot to second it.
No.
Moved by Councillor Rip and now seconded by you. Do you wish to speak to it as seconder?
Not at this point.
Okay, thank you. Any further debate? No, I'll put that straight away. All those in favour?
Against is carried unanimously. Well dealt with by Audit Committee for us. 10.13, draft asset management plans. We have the recommendation on page 433, and after discussion, some additional words which are on the screen. Deputy Mayor, just let us know that you can see them in a second. We're just getting it shared so you can read it. Can you see that, Deputy Mayor?
Yeah, thumbs up.
Okay, great. Thank you. So the additional words there, the scheduled program of works, I always thought was of interest to the residents to know when their street or their drain or whatever is coming up. They're not with us tonight. The staff have them, and that's what's been used to calculate the precise dollars in what we've seen. This would say that they are attached to what goes out for consultation, just to clarify that. Is somebody happy to move that way as on the screen?
It's to order.
Sorry, Councillor De Backer, do you wish to speak to it?
Yeah, I do. I'd just like to congratulate the team on putting together some really nice, clean-looking documents. And it'd be lovely if the strategic plan just fitted in the front. I like a graph and a chart, and I think it's really good they're good explainers for the community. But yes, I think the omission of not having a scheduled program of works, I think that'll be a really useful document for our community.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Ripp, do you wish to speak to it?
Just briefly, to also note that point 3, I believe, was also discussed at Audit Committee, and looking to, I guess, make sure that trees are now part of that, and I think that's really important. Obviously, difficult to value in terms of financial, but we do need to be, was discussed at Audit Committee that we do need to be measuring how we maintain the maintenance of trees. So I think that one's an important addition as well.
Thank you. Any further speakers? Councillor Barnett.
Yes, just touching on that on part 3, because I noticed there's lots of concern in the community and I think amongst Metro Mayors about the draft state government's planning amendment and about the issues there about trees and payments by developers and things like that. So I'm hoping that we included something about that in there.
Okay, thank you. Any further debate? Councillor De Backer, any need to sum up? That concludes debate. All those in favour? Against? It's carried unanimously. 10.14, internal audit function 2020 to 2022, the appointment. Somebody happy to move that way? Councillor Ripp, wish to speak to it?
No, thank you.
Seconder. Councillor Nguyen, do you wish to speak to it? Do we have any further debate? That concludes debate. All those in favour? Against? It's carried unanimously. Item 10.15, LGA Annual General Meeting 2020 voting preferences. It's there for you to note as we try and do annually. Note item 2. Somebody happy to move it as presented on page 523. Deputy Mayor, do you wish to speak to it?
No, thank you.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? That's a group. Do you wish to speak to it?
No, thank you.
Any further debate? Take that to the vote. All those in favour? Against? It's carried unanimously. That's the cleanest that's ever been. Item 10.16, a release of the draft strategic plan for community consultation. Is somebody happy to move it in its current form? Councillor Barnett.
Yes, noting that notes have been included.
I won't ask you to repeat them.
Could be.
Do you wish to speak to it any further, Councillor?
No, I think this is, I'm quite reasonably happy for this to go out for a consultation.
Thank you. Someone happy to second? Councillor De Backer, happy to second it?
Yeah, Councillor Barnett, happy to get it out for community consultation. And I think it's probably 70% of the way there, and the other 30% is what the community is going to add. And I think that's sort of really going to lift our aspirations and focus what we are looking at towards 2020.
Thank you. Further debate?
Yeah, just really happy that we've given it a go about planning in the long term, instead of just sticking to what the local government mandatory requirements are, just a 4-year plan. I think it's good that we are looking into the future and looking what our community plan towards 2040. I think it's really important that it's not just, oh yeah, let's just tick the box and do the 4-year plan, but what do we actually want our city to look in the long term? And I'm glad that we've got it to this point. I do think it needs some tweaking, but I agree that it's about 70% there and the community will add to it.
Thank you. Further debate?
Or did Councillor
Deputy Mayor?
Could Deputy Mayor want to say something?
Deputy Mayor?
Look, I think the hardest part for me was the longest term part of it, and I've had plenty of chances to contribute to what we've arrived at. I think that's probably a bit of a weakness for me in this document, and we've never really done it before, so good on us for giving it a crack. I think the community is probably more interested in the first. Well, I guess they're going to be. Well, we'll find out what they're interested in. But yeah, for me, that was the hardest part to sort of nail how aspirational that needed to be or could be, and how much license we give ourselves for, taking moonshots and those kind of things like that. So I think that we're bold in having a go, and I'm pretty keen to see what the community thinks about what we've put forward as our long-term vision.
Any further debate?
Just a question.
Question from the seconder? Yes, brief question.
Is there going to be a print-friendly version? Because it is all in colour, and I'm concerned that it would be really good if there was a print-friendly version.
CEO?
There can be. It's mainly digital, but we're happy to produce some.
Some of us print things out. So I'm just, yeah.
Sorry, Councillor, can I ask, you asking that question because you've hit the print button and it doesn't print out, or?
Well, it's very print heavy. So you would use a lot of toner. And
Toner heavy, okay.
for people that actually want to access the document.
Sorry, thank you. I just wanted to clarify what the actual issue was. So that.
Well, if council grayscale, if council feels that we need to put out full colour versions for the community, we could use them.
Short run printing's not that.
Yeah, it's a question, Chair, of how long the short run printing could go, and in other words, how many
copies in the library and a couple of other places might be.
Are we happy with
enough.
token copies around? Certainly happy to make sure that happens.
Yeah. Very brief question.
Thank you for the question. Councillor Ripp with a question.
Attachment 5, I've just noticed, 541. What photo are we planning to use there? Because it's just blank white in the background. On page 541, but attachment 5, it's cool.
Those are a blank page, isn't it?
It's got like the heart, it's got the words, but there's nothing in the background. So it's the 5th page of the document.
Sorry.
Well, that's this is what it looks like on our screen.
We had a corrupt file.
The latest version?
That's the one I've got on the agenda. It looks blank.
So that's what I've seen.
This is what's online. It might be an iPad.
It's on the printed.
All right. Okay. That's funny because on here that's what it is.
Friendly version of that.
Basically, I have.
That's what it shows up on our the iPad.
That's clearly a glitch. It's popular. Have you got it there, Nathan? That's the,
Okay.
We've got it on iPad as well.
Cool.
But there's some, as you know, some corruption issues with this
Corrupted file issues.
Sorry, Chair, not corruption issues, but corrupted file. The record.
Yes.
Clarify, Councillor, does that answer your question?
Yes, corrupted files. Yes.
Thank you very much. Any further debate? Okay, Councillor Barnett, do you wish to sum up?
No.
Well, that concludes the debate. All those in favour? Against is carried unanimously. Item 11, general business of an urgent nature. Is there any? No, good. Item 12, reports for information. Sorry, there's a correction, item 12.1, so I'll withdraw the mayoral monthly activity report. Other than that, unless these items are withdrawn, they'll be moved on block. Does anybody wish to withdraw item 12.2, the Eastern Waste Management Authority board meeting minutes? No. Item 12.3, the CEO Performance Development Review Committee minutes. No. The 12.4, the Audit Committee meeting minutes.
Item 12.5, the 2020-21 events season update. No. Item 12.6, Indy closure to Christmas period 2020 to 2021. No, it's always, I always see that report with trepidation because it means Christmas is getting close. Thank you. Deputy Mayor, you happy to move all those on block?
Oh, sorry, I was just going to ask whether I missed it for a second. I wanted to withdraw, which one was it? The activity, where are we? I've lost where we're at. Event season update, that's it, 12.5, sorry, event season update.
Okay, we'll do that. So are you happy to move on block? Well, I've got you 12.2, 12.3, 12.4 and 12.6.
I am happy to do so.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Yep. Councillor Ripp, there's no debate for moving on block. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 12.1, there's a reference to me meeting with the Public Art Advisory Board meeting. I just could not make the meeting, so that has to be deleted from the report. Other than that, I'll be happy to someone to move it with that amendment. Thank you. Councillor Groot, you should speak to it. Councillor DeBacker, you should speak to it.
Just briefly, just in regards to the Prospect Property Network, I also attended that event and it was really informative. We had a HI economist speaking from Melbourne, so it was really just interesting to hear some of their take with COVID and I guess how the demand is still there and some really interested people and some really interesting questions. So yeah, so thanks for putting on the event and it was really informative. So thank you.
We'll put any further debate.
Just a question.
Yes.
Just regarding the meeting with Nigel and the deputy or dip, whatever they called it, regarding intersection of Regency and Prospect Road.
Yes.
What was it about?
It is hard to know when this department changes its name.
Yeah, it's hard to say.
Quite a few. It's DIT, yeah. The nature of the conversation was about, I'm just trying to pick up my report here. The road widening plans adopted by the department several years ago as a remnant of the MATS plan, if you remember that, entitles the department to purchase off of you certain parcels of land, particularly by traffic lights, but not just by traffic lights. So some farmers have got big strips of land that's in the plan, for extending the line down to Seaford and Aldinga. For Prospect Regency Road, it's a traffic-lit intersection, and one of the parties interested in the lead light corner approached us saying she'd gone through the process with DIT to ask them what pieces of the land they may have a holdover, which means you can't build on them, and they may never purchase them, but you can't get approval for you. And DIT came back saying, well, we need 4 metres here to 8 metres on the corner and 8 metres there down to 4 metres down that side. And the prospective purchaser went, well, that doesn't leave a lot. So asked us for assistance. We got DIT out here and said, look, this is an issue on all 4 corners. We're not representing that one owner. We're representing the city, because if this is affecting all 4 corners of this intersection, not much will ever happen. And note that car yard over there has been dead for years. And this might be the problem. Do you really need that much land? And to their credit, they listened to us, and we put up a cogent case saying that they had changed Prospect Road to single lane themselves, not us. They'd changed the speed limit to 50, not us. We said, it seems like you've got no expectation there'll be more traffic on Prospect Road. It's been stable at 23,000 vehicle movements a day for, I don't know, 15 years. They agreed. They said their issues are with Regency Road. They're doing a study on Regency and Main North. It's been announced about a month ago, along with a few other studies. And when they do that, they'll understand more about the Regency Prospect intersection. So we probably can't forego that. They've since come back confirming they don't need any land reserved on the Prospect Road frontage on any of the 4 allotments, is our understanding.
Very small amount.
Very small amount. Just a corner cut-off to allow a left-hand turn any time kind of thing. So that made that prospective purchaser happy, but it made us deliriously happy because we can go to all 4 corners and talk to them about what they may or may not want to do.
Perfect.
So that was the meeting. Yeah.
Great. That's good.
That's the only question you had?
Yes, thanks.
Another question?
Well, Mayor, I just thought I would ask you if you enjoyed attending the 2020 SNFL Grand Final and watching my mighty Woodville West Torrens Eagles get the win over North Adelaide.
Brave.
It's my great joy to be able to control the answer to these questions. My answer is no. Mighty second quarter, but not for us. Any further questions? If that's the case, Councillor Group, do you wish to sum up?
No.
All those in favour? Against? Is carried unanimously. That was an awesome. That was simply awesome second quarter. There was just nothing else to say about it.
Indeed.
Wrong side of it. 12.5, Deputy Mayor, you withdrew it. Was that for a question or to move it, or what was your intention?
Well, I actually just wanted to congratulate Director Cunningham and his team for what I think is a magnificent outcome, pivoting very quickly. Oh, sorry, now you're putting your hand up to...
Yeah, you're happy to move it before you start talking out of turn? Yeah. Okay, carry on.
Good. So I wanted to congratulate Director Cunningham and his team for, at very short notice, pivoting what we normally do and putting together what looks to be a great series of smaller events, something for everybody there. And in particular, the branding looks fantastic. It looks super slick and really high quality. So I think they should be congratulated for what they've done so far. Very interested to hear, once we're through this period of time, the feedback on what worked, what didn't work, and to take that on board for future consideration. I would note that particularly the Festive Streets explosion is a magnificent part of this event series, and I hope all of the elected members have registered their streets to be part of it, because we all voted in favour of funding this, and so I'm assuming that everyone's following through with their fervour and unbridled support of the Festive Streets explosion in particular, and will be, moving forward and hosting a street as part of that. That's the reason I withdrew it, because I thought it was worthy of acknowledging that the hard work that the team's put in.
Thank you. Well done. Seconder, Councillor Barnett.
Yes, I concur with Deputy Mayor Larwood's comments, and I think that as a result of the workshop that we had over in the Broadview Football Club and all that the staff have really interpreted very well our thoughts were, and who knows, it may mean that we're not going to be doing these great big huge events quite so much. These sorts of things were responded to, and with regard to the Expo Street Party thing, I'm actually sponsoring privately as a private resident part of the National Garage Sale Trail, of which down my driveway, and invite the neighbours and some other community groups I'm involved with. But we're a council who hasn't joined up with that nationally, so there are only 10 spaces left. Most probably 9 now. Nobody else has taken up the offer.
Thank you. Any further debate? Councillor De Backer?
Yes, the graphics are really eye-catching. Can I ask if that was done externally or internally? Chair.
You can ask, yes. Did you want an answer?
Yes, I would love an answer.
Yeah, an answer too, please.
Well, through you, Chair, through the Director.
External with strong guidance from the design experience in-house. We're going to solve.
Okay.
So we went to them with themes, colours, but put on paper images by others.
Like I said, like Deputy Mayor said, it looks great. So eye-catching.
Excellent. Further debate, Councillor Ripp?
Yeah, just to clarify, with the Festive Streets explosion, sounds exciting and everything from what I've read. Is it only those people on those streets that can attend, or all the wider streets be invited, just to get some, just to check around that.
CEO, Director?
Yeah, please.
Through the chair, I'd have to check for the specifics. I don't believe it's restricted to only those living in the street.
Okay, so
But in order to organise it, you need to live in the street because
Yep.
you're organising it for the good of that street. But if other family, friends or broader relatives were invited or would come along, it's not being fenced off and ticketed to that degree.
Yeah, so it's not actually, so you're not limiting, so say if it was on Howard Street, it's not like the invites can go out to a few hundred metres radius around. What's the sort of...
Through the chair, the invites will be controlled by those who are running the event.
It will, okay.
And they'll be guided by us in terms of, or by the events team in terms of how they should promote that. What we're finding is those that are coming to us have already got a good number of their neighbours that are supportive. Once they're confirmed that they're locked in as one of the 10 or 15 that we can afford to move forward with, we'll then start talking to them about how they should door knock or broader.
Cool.
Thank you. Any further debate? Deputy Mayor, do you wish to sum up?
I will sum up by saying that it's a great pivot for this year. I'm a big fan of events such as the terrific street party and those kind of things. I think they're cornerstones of what we do as a council. So I wouldn't necessarily say that this is how we should proceed moving forward, but in this instance, it's a fantastic outcome. I'd like to, I guess, determine whether we can put forward this program of events as something which we can get recognition for. I'm not sure whether there's anything in the LGA coming up that recognises this kind of thing. But I think, once again, congratulations to Nathan and his team for reacting and responding and presenting something which has something for everybody, and I look forward to participating in a lot of these events.
Thank you. That concludes debate. All those in favour? Yes, it's unanimous. Thank you. Council member reports and briefings. Are there any? If not, move on to motions on notice. 14.1 from myself, leveraging council's procurement policy to drive recycling on page 620. And I'll move it. There we go. And it is as read there, item 1, that council resolves that forthwith the Chief Executive Officer change internal practices to align with council's previous decisions and intent by 1.1, preventing the purchase of single-use plastics except where alternatives are currently unavailable. 1.2, requiring recycled content in every material supply purchase outcome where available as an acceptable equivalent and within a 20% price differential to options with no recycled content. 1.3, in achieving the above, place a strong emphasis on choosing products incorporating materials recycled through local government curbside collection streams. 1.4, such that exceptions can only be made by express approval of the CEO, who shall report such exceptions to council no less than annually. And 1.5, these changes to be reflected in an updated procurement policy to be submitted to the Audit Committee, then council, for approval at the December 2020 meetings. And in speaking to it, I sort of have come to this through a couple of channels. One is I've been fighting nationally to get better recycling policy nationwide. And the key gap is that whilst everyone's happy to push this stuff in the right bin and get someone to take it away and hope they take it to a good place, it's just not enough people saying, I'm going to buy it back. And you can imagine what happens if you get all this good stuff sorted and it sits somewhere waiting for someone to buy it back and no one does. You just get a bigger stockpile, the value drops, the incentive to sort it drops, and the whole thing falls in a hole. And I thought, well, who better to close that loop than us, who know exactly what it means to pick up people's yellow top bin. And if we're prepared to talk the talk, we better start walking the walk. So in theory, yes, we should do this. Why then such a kind of a constraining motion? Well, it's because what I've noticed is that the behaviour of our team here has not changed. So we've said lots of stuff, but if you go into Ratley Reserve upgrade, you'll see pine chips on the ground from a brand new tree chipped instead of mulch that's come from our green bin. You'll see playground equipment made out of brand new stuff with not a hint of recycling in any bit of it. You'll see a park bench, which will come to in the next motion,
made out of brand new aluminium and brand new timber, not a hint of recycled plastic anywhere, except the park sign, the JW Ratley Reserve sign, which is on recycled plastic from about 20 years ago. So I thought something's not getting through, and I wanted to, if we mean this, that we as elected members really start to tighten up what we mean by this and put some strictures around it, but not lock it up such that the CEO can't undo it for a very good reason, and give the CEO that responsibility to tell us when that's happened, but no more than annually. I think it's not going to hang around and say every week come and see us or ask for that every council meeting, merely to make the intent turn into real words and actions, but give the CEO that ability, if we can't do it, that comes back to us as a report. And that might inform what we do next in terms of, do we change the policy more, or do we go to the marketplace saying, these are the gaps we've seen, please help us fill these gaps with new products. The next evolution I'm hoping to see is in road pavements. We've spoken plenty about that. We've changed contractors for that, but we're yet to be, and I'm not sure if the director, you might want to ask a question, but I haven't seen an example of us using recycled material actually yet in the city. Because if we were, we'd love to know about it, because it's such a great story to tell, and we get everyone who's interested to drive along it and go and scratch and sniff it and bang their hand into it and see it just like the other stuff that's black and flat. But a particular emphasis in this on reusing materials coming out of the yellow bin. And I say that because the road contractors are pretty keen to use black stuff that they've pulled off an old road somewhere, which used to go to landfill. Good for them, happy to talk about reusing that. But unless we get our plastics into that road as well, we're not helping our yellow bin and our curbside collection, or our soft plastics collection through other means from our community. So I thought it was worth really trying to spell that out as well. There is a point at which this stuff can't work, so there are a couple of exceptions in here around single-use plastics, but I'd really, really, really like this to be picked up by the team to say, we're going to work incredibly hard to find materials that fit this description and avoid using single-use plastics, if at all possible. So instead of gar bags, we use bio bags and those sort of things. Unfortunately, things like sewer pipe and stormwater pipe, not every size is made in recycled plastic materials, so we get a bit stuck somehow. So anyway, that's the motion I put before you, and embedded in the procurement policy, so it becomes much, much tighter. Is there a second?
Yes.
Barnett.
Yes. Thank you, Mayor, for tightening up on this in our internal practices, because when I moved, was a few years ago, about reducing single-use plastics, I thought we were going quite a long way towards doing all this sort of stuff. So I'm glad that we're maybe extending it not just to be using and biodegradable cups and all the other things with events and what happens here. I do note that there are examples around Australia of towns and cities that have actually gone throughout the whole town and the whole city, because we are just really limiting this to our use. So that may be something we could learn from, how some of these other townships have done that. So thank you for bringing this to us.
Thank you. Any further speakers? Councillor De Backer.
Yeah, look, I think it's a very common sense motion, probably just with a few caveats around it. I think, again, some of the big ticket items, we need to have some sort of triaging. So I guess at the top of the list, it does have to be fit for purpose. So things that, wear with UV or, toxins. So it has to be Australian standards. So I think some reassurances for ratepayers that, it's still good product, but fit for purpose. The other thing to consider is also locally made. So you see in the construction industry a lot, they do all these LEED products or green buildings, then they import all the products from overseas. So I would sort of triage it a little bit and just sort of say fit for purpose, locally made and recycled where possible. And look, I'm sure the department have their own sort of common sense answers on that. And then if I can suggest to the Mayor to recycle his motion and send it out to all the other mayors around Australia, we might be able to get some economies of scale going.
Thank you. Any other speakers?
Well, I actually like the flexibility in this motion because it's clear what we're aiming to do, but also if it, for whatever reason, it's not possible in a particular upgrade, the CEO's then got the flexibility, well, to come back to us and let us know. So it doesn't lock them into something that they can't do. So I think the flexibility in the motion is good, so I'm happy to support it.
Excellent. Thank you. Further debate, Councillor Groot.
We'll absolutely support the motion. Just a question, maybe to you, Mayor, or to CEO. Item 1.4 around the exceptions being reported annually. I'm just thinking through a scenario where there are lots of exceptions early on in the implementation of this. Now, I presume the CEO may come to us anyway and say, hey, look, there's a problem here. I'd rather that happen than wait for 12 months and say, actually, we did none of it because we couldn't because there was a supply issue, where we could then maybe try and work our way through that. So I guess I'm just making that as a comment, not amending or anything like that, but I'd imagine the CEO would, if there are major blockages early on, come to us. Otherwise, I'm happy with the annual reporting back around exceptions.
Yep.
No comment.
Thank you. Further debate? We'll just move to summing up. There's some really good feedback there. Whole of city aspiration, I agree. Councillor Barnett, that'd be terrific. But I think we need to fully walk this stuff before we impose it on others. And we've got a long way to go. Fit for purpose, absolutely. There are limits, though. I think if we, oh boy, how do I say this? There's lots of excuses not to do new things. And I don't want to give people so many excuses. They say, well, it's all too hard to go and try that new thing. I'm just going to use the old thing that I used yesterday that I know works. We need to break the cycle and change the culture. So that's why it's why I haven't been specific around those sort of words. Your idea of locally made, absolutely, and that's already in the procurement policy and gives the staff some flexibility around doing that. Bio bags that we bought initially for our benchtop bins were manufactured overseas. They're now being made locally, is my understanding. In fact, I've been invited to go on a tour of the plant, which I'm really excited to do. I'm not sure when it's coming up, but if I can hook you all, and if you're interested, that'd be terrific, because that's really high technology stuff and really fantastic it's here. Send to other mayors. Incidentally, you would have all read, and I know, I'm not sure who said that, in the AGM items that we were just asked to endorse a suggested voting position on, the very last one's a very long motion, pretty much along these lines. Well, the LGA is saying in response to what Prospect's raised and others, but they told me today, mainly Prospect, all the research says if you want to do this properly, you've got to change your procurement policies. So I've developed this motion in parallel with, but not actually in reference to that. That came up while I was doing this, and I thought, oh, that's nice. So it is actually on the agenda papers to do that, which I think is great. And I think, Councillor Groot, just to finish off, your idea of no less than annually does facilitate the CEO coming back fairly quickly if there are a substantial number of problems for us to think about. And I think that's a good idea, should that be encountered. So thank you for those suggestions, and I endorse the motion to you. That concludes the debate. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Second one, 14.2, again from myself, inclusive park picnic tables, alluded to a bit before by Councillor Barnett. Council resolved that the Chief Executive Officer ensures that all future installations of fixed park or picnic tables or table and bench settings are designed such that they can be easily accessed by people in wheelchairs or other common mobility devices. And again, just talking to it, we had this discussion around Nana Wirra Park with Councillor Harris, who unfortunately can't be with us tonight, when his daughter was in a wheelchair, and he said, you know what, as a councillor, I'm really embarrassed that she can't sit at the table with us, and why not? And it turns out there's very easy solutions to this. So I thought we'd change that in a policy sense through that discussion, because the park benches in that park are accessible. And all it means is you don't have a big T leg on the end of it. You either have 4 legs on the table, which means able-bodied people bang their knees getting into the bench, but wheelchairs can just slide in between the 2 legs. We have the legs inset on the table, and the table just overhangs. And it's very easy to fix. Imagine my disappointment at poor old Ratley Reserve. He was a good bloke, right? But the reserve at the moment is just letting him down. The very brand new picnic table doesn't have it, right? It's inaccessible for someone in a wheelchair. And I thought, oh boy, hence the motion. Let's just tighten it up, make it really clear that that's now policy, and it's not permitted to do another one unless there's some special reason, in which case the CEO can come and beg forgiveness. But it's as simple as that. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Ripp, do you wish to speak to it?
Oh, look, just to say it's a common sense motion, and I certainly hope that it's done in future ones. I was disappointed to hear that it's not being done with Ratley, but no, it's a common sense motion, I think.
Any further debate, Councillor Barnett?
Yes, just noting that wheelchairs are other common mobility devices, because that could also include prams. And
yes, that's right. Yes. Yeah. Any further debate? I don't see any need to sum up. I'll just put that to the vote. All those in favour? Against is carried unanimously. Item 14.3, also moved by myself. I'm not trying to set a record, but I think that is unusual. That is around the planning compliance and enforcement improvement item there, and it's quite a long motion. I just seek leave of the meeting not to read that out in full. All those in favour?
yes,
You've all read it. In speaking to it, this has arisen out of the discussions with the Belford Apartments people, but not just them. It's arisen from other people. And we've been on a bit of a journey in terms of setting our planning aspirations for the corridors, which I think we've largely achieved in principle. We've then set our desires for the types of building form, and I think we've got what we wanted. Really, we didn't have the 6 and 8 stories that other councils got. We got the heights that we thought would work, that are lower than anybody else. We worked really hard to get the planning rules to be right. First round, we didn't get as much freedom as we wanted. We went back at a second round and we got that much, much tighter. So I think we're on a really good journey. But of course, it all only makes sense if it's backed up in the field and people do what they say they're going to do, and we follow through and make them do what they've been approved to do. And I think that's where we're falling down. And I regret to say this is the 5th motion in 2 or 3 years about trying to tighten up on performance in this area. But I do think it's really important that we make it very clear to the CEO, and so he can make it very clear to his staff, that we don't want any wriggle room with this stuff. These buildings are too big, they're visually very impactful, and people notice the buildings. Even if they are beautiful, people still think that's a big building. They're already anxious, right? To have a big building looking ugly is a real problem. And if we find out later it looks ugly because the developer didn't install all the nice bits, that makes me really, really cranky because I don't know how to defend that. So what I'm asking for you to support here is that we ask the CEO to take a zero tolerance approach to that. So the staff get in really early, and if they see the scaffold start to come off the building and the nice bits have not been installed, that the staff go, hang on a minute, scaffold comes down means you're not going to install them. I'm going to get into you right now about that and not wait until people move in and put their pot plants on the balcony, because that creates all sorts of problems once they become occupants. And we have the ability to use regulatory powers more than we're using at the moment, and I think we should on developments that are large, and you'll see in the words in there that I've tried to restrict it to higher density and commercial developers. I think there's always going to be a bit of nuancing about low density developers, because often that's mum and dads who aren't used to developing, and they need a bit more flexibility about whether the fence goes up properly or the landscaping gets done at the front, or the driveway paving gets installed straight away. I don't think they're creating issues for us, as annoying as sometimes those things are. The bigger projects are creating problems for us, and they're embarrassing problems to try and explain as a mayor, and I'm sure you've found that as a councillor. I think the rest of the motion's pretty self-explanatory. My vision is that we have good conversations with developers up front to lock them into knowing that we will be right on their tail. And at the front of the conversation, they're not going to deny that they're going to build exactly what's just been approved, because it's fresh. And I want us to get a reputation also that we're not only looking after the community's interest in looking at these buildings, but we're looking after the people who move into it. Say, we're making sure that you're moving into a quality product as it was approved. And we're doing our job in making sure that's the case, and that becomes our reputation going forward. So I commend it to you, and now I'll look for a second. Councillor Barnett, do you wish to speak to it?
Second it, given the example that's been mentioned before, the Belford Apartments, and I'm just wondering where, because some of the comments from those apartment owners, if I'm not out of order, were that felt they were deceived by a lot of the drawings and a lot of what was, meant to be and meant to look like and things like that. So I don't know that's more of a legal thing. So I don't know where that comes in with our planning and our legal things too. But deceptive practices or something or other like that. But I mean, our CEO with his legal background may have more information about that. I think that push comes to shove, and people, if they're doing this, it's all time is money and everything and whatever. But at the end of the day, I think we have to be fair to the people that are buying into our city, right? And so hopefully this will go some way towards correcting some of those things.
Thank you. Any further debate? Councillor De Backer.
Yeah, look, just a question first. I'm just querying the use of high density. I'm just trying to find out where it's written. The 1.1?
1.1, I think, isn't it?
I'm just wary only because the definition in the development plan. So if you have something that's 3-story, if we can't enact that, I'd be more in favour of doing medium and high density. I don't know if you see that as an issue.
I'll take the question as the mover briefly. I did dwell on this. The words, I put higher so as to avoid that problem.
Right. As long as it's not interpreted.
CEO, I think in terms of the question is, would higher be interpreted as meaning only high and not medium? My contention is no, but you have to interpret it.
Well, but you've got in the same sense commercial developers, so
yes.
It's higher end commercial. So one would pick them up. I read commercial as
apartment developers.
Yes.
Okay, sorry. Yes.
Higher than medium.
They're all commercial.
The difficulty, sorry, the difficulty I had with medium and high is that we don't actually have any high. The definition for high is 10 stories and above, and someone's.
That's why I was questioning the terminology.
But if we say medium, the public might think, well, hang on a minute, you're doing all this high density. So I've tried to use a term that's not defined per se to try and do an indicative version. And I didn't want to have to go down to defining it so tightly that it became unworkable, and that would then create exceptions. So really it's up to CEO to interpret, and I think you seem pretty clear.
So thank you, Chair. I mean, the spirit and intent of this is abundantly clear, and the administration is in deep agreement with the spirit and the intent. I would just simply say, Chair, that it's not a panacea. We'll do everything we can. We read it loud and clear. Councillor Barnett, as you pointed out, there's a lot of commercial legal issues that we don't have any purview over. But long story short, yes, because I have to keep it short now.
Yes. I just stick to the topic.
I do understand that. Okay, right.
The higher medium was the question. Sorry.
Yeah, no, that's all right.
So just the question, and just a comment. So look, I totally support this motion. I think it's a long time coming. What hasn't been come up a few times. But one of the concerns that I do have, and I think something that where we could use our audit committee and risk in not acting when we could have, has that left us open to a legal point of view? And I mean, one of the things that this motion is trying to achieve is not just delivering better developments from a compliance point of view, but to some degrees protecting owners. So if I was an owner who bought into something and the council could have done something and didn't, that's my concern. So I think it would be interesting to run this past the audit committee to see what risk we're exposed to in not enacting some of these things sooner.
Thank you. Any further debate? Councillor Ripley.
Happy to support the motion. I would like, if possible, through the chair, just to hear from the administration on the practicality of implementing this, because the intent's brilliant. So happy to support the motion, but I also want to see on the ground whether this was actually going to be enacted and what powers council actually has. So say if a high density developer amidst external structures, what powers do we actually have to actually say that XYZ was approved in the plan, put it in? What powers do we actually have to do it?
Thank you. CEO? Very short answer, Councillor. We have limited power. Many of the issues are common law issues and contractual issues. We have some power. I'm informed by, I'm not a planner's elbow, but I'm informed by my staff that this may not reduce the time that people get remedies. We'll do everything we can. What we're hearing is that we need to send a message early that's very strong. The cut and thrust of modern building and the players who play in the space, we're still dealing with people who know how to rule the system, who know how to deal with courts. And at the end of the day, we will absolutely take on board council's frustration and concern. I think we all share that. But I can't say that we're going to deliver shorter term results or anything else. We'll do what we can to send a very strong message.
Just a follow-up question. Can I just get some explanation? What does limited power mean? Like if I'm sitting here, I'm on the street and I'm saying, I just want to get an understanding of what limited power, what does that actually do?
I need to defer to the director.
Director. Yeah, look, through the chair, and thanks for the question. Look, I think probably a simple example is the best way, and the Mayor used an example of omitting certain structures or elements. The Development Act allows you to serve a notice to demand that be remedied. You then have to put a reasonable time frame on that, and if you don't, that can get appealed and it can get drawn out. I think what an objective outsider from the Act might be looking for is an ability to fine someone $100 a day for that breach or something in order to really push. Those tools don't exist within the Development Act, but we do have the tools and the ability to do more than just send a sternly worded letter, for example. So we've got this opportunity to serve a notice. It then goes through a potentially lengthy legal discussion if the developers choose to push it down that path. If they choose to deliver the outcome that was part of the approval, then they will comply with the notice and we will move forward and essentially people will be happy. So the Development Act is really written to try and get the building built as approved, but it's not written to try and get the building built absolutely quickly and absolutely as it was approved, because there are mechanisms for the developers to seek to change that. So I guess I just want to make that point. It's not the best tool, the Development Act, for enforcement, but this clear direction lifts service levels for urban corridor. We can do that, and we will do that. We've had a week or so to look through the details of the words around this, and we feel that we can achieve a higher standard in line with this intent, which is essentially pushing a more forceful line than the current policy suggests we do earlier.
Yeah, and I certainly hope that we're on to people early, because if we're not, then that opens us up as well. So look, I'm happy to support the motion. And let's hope that achieve some outcomes on the ground.
Any further debate? Councillor Pearce.
I commend the motion, absolutely. But then I take on board what Nathan's saying. And I refer to the urban corridors, and I think our planning team are doing the right thing, or the best they can. There's a 130 Churchill Road prospect, which is occupied obviously now for a long time. The developer was advised on the 20th of March that he hadn't put up screening, which then there's an email in April, again in May, discussions held with builder. But it does mention that the applicant has until January 2021 to complete. Now, the team is following up in May, again in June, July. He keeps saying it'll be finished soon. Advised on the 3rd of August that privacy students commence soon. 9th of the 9th, screening will commence following completion of a Wilcox development, which is somewhere up there, I think. It's a great motion, but like Nathan's saying, the powers I fear are beyond us. Like, because he's got until January 2021 to do that. So, you can do what you like. You can take him to court. He can just, like Nigel's saying, they know the rules. They'll exploit them. Yeah.
Can I ask another question?
Sorry, Councillor, finished?
So thank you, yes.
And just in regards to that, do we not have the power to grant certificates of occupancy in regards to completion?
CEO?
Sorry, again, through you, Chair.
Through the chair, we have the power. However, as a general practice, the types of buildings that we're talking about, which are the high-rise, essentially, the multi-unit developments, private certifiers have done 100% of those in the urban corridor zone since it was enacted in 2013. So there's an opportunity for a developer to use council's building certifier to do that process, but it has never occurred.
Question to the chair. Is there a complaints process against private certifiers?
Through the chair, sorry.
Sorry?
Through the chair, there is a complaints policy where a complaint can be made against the actions of a private certifier. To the best of my knowledge, and from some investigations a year or two ago, I haven't found any examples of someone going through that process. It involves writing an objection to the minister, and it's a convoluted process, I guess, is the short answer. And just further to that, the council doesn't have an opportunity formally to say that that certificate of occupancy is not accurate. We just receive it.
Thank you. Any further debate? I'll move to summing up and answer a few of those questions. Does not acting create a risk for us was one of the issues raised. I think it's a very, very good question, and I don't know the answer, but I'm sure the CEO has been exercising his mind about that. What powers do we actually have is a very good question, and to my mind, we have more powers and we have not been using them. The example given by Councillor Pearce is a really good one because we've sent lots of letters. We haven't issued a Section 84 notice, which says you're not going to get occupancy unless you finish this. And we haven't liaised with the certifier, who we know that who the certifier is, and said, dear certifier, we've served a Section 84 notice. We don't want you to grant certification until this item's fixed. Now, people can rort the system, but the more loops we put around their ankles, the harder they're going to find it to jump. And we haven't been doing those things, and I'm very disappointed about that. After a Section 84 notice, if we want to say, now you must fix it, a Section 85 notice is available to us. Now, I'm only aware that we've applied both of those in succession on one project, which was a shopping centre in a nearby vicinity to this new building we're in, where when I became mayor, there were so many things going wrong with it. We served a Section 84 notice on it and listed 14 things that weren't in compliance with the approval. Now, that owner took us to court to have them lifted. On the third court appearance, after losing the first two, the judge said, dear developer, it's now 16 items. I suggest you spend your time fixing the items than talking to me. Go away. Now, we got all those fixed, and the very first tenant who moved in prior to them all being fixed, we rang the tenant saying, you're an illegal occupation of that tenancy because this has not been certified for occupancy. Tenant withdrew, the developer could get no rent, the developer had to fix the items because we forced the issue. So what powers we got? To one person, they mightn't look very strong. To someone who knows how to wield them, I think that can be very, very effective, very effective. But you've got to want to do it, and you've got to want to talk to the certifier, you've got to want to put maximum pressure on, and you've got to act early. You can't wait until you see people turn the lights on and they're cooking dinner in the thing. Because as it's been explained to me, once the occupants are in there, you want to serve a notice, you have to serve it on all the new occupants as well as the developer, because they're suddenly the owner. Now, what a terrible thing for us to do, to have taken so long to fix these things that our regulatory powers say, well, sorry, council, because you've dithered, you now have to force put a notice on all these poor occupants, who in my view, we should have been, in a way, protecting on the way through. So I think we've got to get in early, we've got to get tougher. Our community, no one in our community will argue with anything about this motion. They expect that we are doing this. And in my view, we have not been. And I do think that there's a lot more to do in terms of the liaison beyond just the developer and the builder. It is about talking to the other consultants. This goes to the certificate of occupancy issue, and this will be tightened up in the planning reforms. It'll be mandatory to have a certificate of occupancy in South Australia once the reforms are introduced. It's wishy-washy at the moment. As part of the certification, the certifier asks the builder to sign a certificate of completion. Now, if we've notified the certifier that we don't think the building's complete, and the certifier gets a notice of completion from the builder, what do you think they're going to do? If we've stayed silent, certifier will take it in good faith that things have been done and dusted, council's got no issues, they've not told me anything, I'll sign the certificate of occupancy, people can move in. We have to play a role. This will tighten it up. It doesn't tighten it up enough if I don't see the results in the field, and if you don't see them, then bring something back and let's get it further tightened up. But I think, as you've heard from the CEO, the intent is clear, the commitment's there. Let's get on with it. I commend the motion to you. That concludes the debate. All those in favour? Against? Is carried unanimously. Thank you, elected members. I think that concludes this part of the meeting. Sorry, just the next item, which is questions with notice. Nil. Confidential items is the next item. 16.1, the cyber security examination. Got those papers to hand. The audit, just pursuant to section 93E and 93J, which is to go into confidence. Let me just pull it up. It's on the screen. Quicker.
Are we live on YouTube?
Yeah, after this item. So this is to go into confidence. Is somebody happy to move this way? Councillor Barnett, do you wish to speak to it? Do I have a seconder? Councillor Brute, do you wish to speak to it? Or any further debate? Concludes the debate. All those in favour? Against is carried unanimously. Thank you. We'll now go into confidence. This means we'll shut down the Zoom.